OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
7:30 on this Wednesday morning. You're very welcome along to OTB AM. Eoin and Ger with you right the way through until 10 o'clock this morning, and a packed show coming your way. We have got Kenny Cunningham joining us to chat through last night's Premier League action, and he's also going to be doing a play-by-play on Liverpool's depth chart. Where do they need to strengthen? Where are they already pretty set? That's coming your way at 9 o'clock this morning. And also Graham Hunter in that hour will be chatting to us about Real Madrid, about Barcelona and the Messi exit rumours that now seem perhaps at their most real. The story comes up every so often, but now it seems that the possibility of Messi leaving the club seems more real than it has done at any point during his 15 years of being a senior contracted footballer there. Sports pages coming your way later as well. Plenty on last night's football, plenty on the FAI, an explosive meeting last night by all accounts, and plenty again on GAA and ratting people out if you happen to be a volunteer of the GAA. Is that something you would do, Ger, if you were in a position where you cared about your county, but you also cared about your club a little bit more? Would you send an email to your county board chairperson or secretary or PRO and say, listen, such and such a player has been taken away from my club, do something about it?
No, you've got to go straight to Croke Park, isn't that?
Oh, sorry, of course.
That's how that works. You can ignore. I mean, the other thing is snitches get stitches. We know that, right? That's the main thing here, Eoin, is that snitches get stitches. I mean, this is Ireland. We have touts. We have a long history of not really liking touts, tarring and feathering them in the 60s and 70s. Like, pretty grim scenarios all around. Look, is this? Maybe there's no other way. Like, how else do you do it?
It's dead silence when you ask that question. It's dead silence when you ask that question, because there is no precedent, at least in the GEA, for us doing things in any other way. Like, I'm starting to actually rethink the idea that it was the correct idea to just freeze intercounty out altogether until the middle of September. Perhaps players should have just been allowed to train with their county anyway, and then
a little bit, yeah.
And then the thing was controlled.
It's not just training though; it's gatherings for walkthroughs and meetings as well. That seems now to have been part of the sweeping description of what you're not allowed to do, which all seems a little bit draconian. Other sports have found that there have been significant injuries in the way that they've come back. We were talking to somebody about this. I think Ron O'Gara was talking about the injury spikes that they've seen in the NRL and the Bundesliga, and how they were tapering their pre-season 3 weeks on, a week off, 3 weeks on, a week off. You'd hope that the same level of science is happening in the junior CGA clubs that suddenly have their inter-county players back. The Maserati of the athlete world is now suddenly training with the Zetter tractors, and there'll be different requirements, and they'll have to get to a level where, you know, they're going to be up competing against the Dubs or Kerry or Tyrone, and knowing that, yeah, okay, I'm doing the right level of physical preparation for the championship, which is coming down the line.
We'd love to hear your thoughts on that this morning. You can get in touch with us by tweeting us at Off The Ball. You can comment on the stream if you happen to be watching on Facebook or on YouTube as well. We're starting this morning, though, with Sarah Rowe, because she joined Joe Malloy on last night's show. Have a look at this.
Okay, so we're here to celebrate the latest chapter in the 20 by 20 movement, which has been a huge success over the last number of years. And we've got a brilliant prize to let you know about. To do all of that, we're joined by a 20 by 20 ambassador, former Republic of Ireland international, Mayo footballer, Collingwood footballer as well. Sarah Rowe, great to have you on the show. How are you doing?
Good now, thanks for having me.
Did I see you're down Ballina Way, Enniscrone Beach Way over the last couple of days?
Yeah, it's unbelievable down there now. I'm blessed to have all that stuff on my doorstep.
My grandparents are from there, so I know it well. You're in Liam McHale, David Brady territory.
Yes, just down the road from them.
Enniscrone is one of the great beaches.
Oh, it's honestly heaven. I actually think it's probably my favourite place in the world. Like, it's that nice, and especially on a sunny day. But I'm down there every day for a dip in the sea, even with this weather. And
then straight to the arcade and the slot machines. And then
for a 99 and happy days.
So what's the story? Obviously, COVID has interrupted all our lives. AFLW season was continuing and ongoing, and then it's off, it's cancelled, fly home. Is that the gist?
Yeah, it was fast forwarded to the semi-finals, and then we played a semi-final on a Saturday, and then the season was called off on a Sunday. So it was all up in the air for kind of a week or two leading into that. So we kind of knew what direction it was going, but like anyone, you couldn't really predict all that has went on. So flights were being cancelled, then they were being rebooked and then cancelled again. And so I managed to get home. So I've been home since the end of March and just been at home in Mayo since. So it's been nice to have that time with family and friends.
Yeah, I'm sure. And was there any temptation or any need to stay out in Australia? Probably not, especially once the season was over.
Not really, but I was actually studying while I was over there. I'd finished my degree in what I wanted to do. So I was studying life coaching and NLP, neuro-linguistic programming and hypnosis. So I'd finished my degree, but there was one or two other bits that I kind of wanted to tidy up on, but they were like, I was going to set up a website and stuff, but I've actually got someone to help me with that in Ireland now, so it was fine. It all worked out, but that was kind of the thing that was holding me there for another few weeks. But obviously everything got cancelled, and any of the things that I wanted to do were cancelled anyway, so I got home then, and I was happy enough to get home in the end. Okay.
NLP and hypnosis, fascinating. So what's attracted you to that world?
So about 4 years ago, I went to a life coach myself. Now, I'd been to like numerous sports psychologists and stuff, and we've had loads, like in Collingwood, we've had sports psychologists and all that. And I've always found that side of things really interesting, because I do believe that, you train your body to be a certain way to perform on like a certain day, but you also need to train your mind to be a certain way to be able to, deal with setbacks and deal with things that come up along the way in your career. So I found that an invaluable I suppose tool for me going to that life coach. She was just one of the, when you just meet someone, you're like, that person just works for me, and we built a relationship, and I checked in with her little and often, and she was just instrumental, I suppose, in helping me to think a certain way. And I'm the only person I can control is me, and just her perspective on things, and just kind of being a bouncing board for any thoughts or anything that I wanted to bounce off her. So I was like, I actually really want to learn more about this. I was always very intrigued, and I always loved like communication and good relationships with people in my team, and asking questions and kind of coming from a curious point of view, like a non-judgmental kind of just what's going on, like, because we all come from such different places and different things work for different people. I was always interested in that. So when I went on to study it, I was like, I really want to be able to help others as well. And so I started taking on clients the last 3 weeks, and I took on a few when I was in Australia as well. So it's been great, and I absolutely enjoyed every minute of it. So it's nice to have, some sort of passion that's outside of sport as well, but also helps with sport too.
Wow. So how might your thinking around the game or a certain occasion differ now as opposed to before you met this person who had the impact on you?
Well, like, we talk about the subconscious mind a lot, and like, I think of the way I think of that is like, it's nearly two different types of people. Like, the voice in your head that says, no, you can't run, like, this is too hard, like, stop. And then the other part of your head that's like, Sarah, you're well able, like, keep going, like, you're better than that kind of thing. So it's like, there's nearly two people in your head. So it's like kind of having conversations with that person is like, that's what I've learned over studying NLP. It's all about the subconscious mind, and, we control how we think. So, leading up to a game or whatever, like, we can't help that certain thoughts might come into our head, but we actually can control how we deal with them. And, the way we think will determine how we act, and then that'll determine how we feel. So I'm in control of me. So I know that now. And like, it's taken time to kind of figure it out, talk out loads of things, and kind of figure out who I am and like what my values are, what I believe. And, we're in a world full of so much information, and, our views sometimes can be skewed by the environment we're surrounded by, or like maybe the values we want to pick up from our parents. So I suppose I found out who I was throughout it all, and I suppose what I actually stood for. And it helps me stay really true to myself all the time when I'm making decisions. So I'm not making decisions for others, I'm making it for myself. So it just made me become much more self-aware. Okay,
so maybe small example, you're out playing for Collingwood, we're in the midst of your second season, you've got a big game against very good team, and voice in your head naturally enough says, Sarah, you're not really up for this. This is a sport you've only been playing for 2 years. You're going to get trampled at the weekend. It's a perfectly natural thought. We all have, negative bias in that respect. What do you do with that thought then?
So, like, I talk to myself in my head, and I'd be like, I'd kind of have a laugh at myself, and I'd be kind of like, nice one, like, fair play to you trying to trick me there, but not working this time, kind of thing. So it's like I kind of like, I acknowledge the thought, and I'm kind of like, thanks for the thought, but no thank you, that's not what I truly believe myself. So kind of get lost, kind of thing. So it's kind of like an interesting one. Like, I tried a few things on a few of the girls on my team who were struggling with confidence issues and stuff, and I got them to come. We had a chat and we went through a few things, and then one of the girls said in particular that she'd, as soon as she's told that she's picked on the team, she literally goes, oh my God, like, I'm a fraud. Like, why am I picked? Like, I'm definitely not good enough for this level. Like, I can't do this. So I was like, challenge that voice and, like, think of it as kind of like a different person, and say to yourself, kind of laugh at it and say, no, sorry, nice trying out today, but no, I'm not having any of you, kind of thing. I'm going to think the way I believe that I know I can. And she was like, as soon as he told her she was picked for the starting team that weekend, it just straight away, you're a fraud. And then she straight away went, no, sorry now, but thanks for that, but I'm moving on. And she's like, completely changed my week. She was the best performance of her life that week. And she was like, it sounds so small and so trivial, but it's so powerful.
Yes. Well, I think a lot of people are interested in this whole area, and CBT works along similar lines as well, challenge the logic of some of our crazier thoughts. Hypnosis, though, I'm sure you're getting some wry looks down Ballina way when you say hypnosis. So people's understanding of hypnosis is up on stage, crowd are laughing because someone from the audience thinks the chair is now an elephant. Yeah,
so maybe I'm brainwashing you here and you don't even know.
I do feel dizzy.
But no, it's like, it's all about, for me, it's not like what I studied is not about the whole woo up on stage kind of thing, I'm going to make you do crazy stuff. It's more about habit change and, like, getting people off cigarettes or like alcohol. And I sometimes do self-hypnosis before I go to bed at night. It helps me sleep, and it helps me, I suppose, train my brain again to think a certain way. So it's been a really good tool, and I was more so intrigued about it, and I wanted to learn about it. And but it's more so about habit forming and habit changing, and that's why it's kind of relevant to 2020, because it's all about the small things that you do often in order to change the way you think.
Yes, and I do want to get onto that. You're going to be an interesting mentor for somebody, I realise. We're going to give an off-the-ball listener a chance for you to mentor them for the next 3 weeks. How does self-hypnosis work? Like, you're not swinging a little clock in front of your eyes, I presume.
No. So, like, I might be reading a certain script of stuff that I say want to do over the next while, and like it's nearly like affirmations kind of thing, and I'd be reading that maybe like 15 times before I go to bed, and then I find myself waking up and like I'm going to the toilet or getting a glass of water or something, that like it just kind of rings in my head, and the next day I can just hear it kind of filtering through my head throughout the day. So it's an interesting one, but it definitely does work. And and also it depends as well on the buy-in of the person. And like, if someone comes to me and says, I want you to help me with becoming more active or changing my habits, like I will do tests on them to figure out how much they actually want to change. If you don't want to change, you're coming to the wrong person. Like, if you're open and honest to change, I can help you. But if you really are just coming for, after I'll go to this person and you will see what it's all about kind of thing, like that's not going to work for you either. So it has to be your buy-in as well. But if I felt that you weren't buying in, say from the start, I'd say, maybe you're at the wrong person.
Well, I've no doubt. Like, look, a percentage of people will be listening with their arms crossed saying, not for me, mumbo jumbo, not for me. But so that's amazing that you have some clients already. You're at that stage. Is this something you could see yourself continuing 10, 20, 30 years into the future?
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely my passion. Like, it's 100%. I know what I want to do now, which I never thought I'd say I'd have a passion that was outside of football. It was always just sport for me. And I suppose I did teaching in college, and I just, I didn't enjoy the whole teaching kids. I enjoyed kind of figuring out about kids and, coming, like, again, asking loads of questions to kind of see where they all came from. So I always found myself like being more interested in the mind rather than the kind of teaching side of things. So yeah, for me, I've taken on a few clients the last few weeks, and it's been so enlightening for me, and I've really enjoyed it. You know, it's very rewarding as well when you can see change in people and people are really buying into, you know, the whole thing. So it's definitely what I'm going to do going forward, and I'm going to continue to work and keep learning it.
Yeah, well, I can see the link with teaching. So it's not so much the forcing a kid to learn Macbeth over and over, but it's the helping someone that attracts you, that buzz that people get. It's why so many people love coaching and love teaching, is when they see that somebody has, you know, a spark has gone off or they've improved someone's life. It's there's an amazing buzz in that.
Oh yeah, such a buzz. Like when like that with kids and being involved, I wouldn't enjoy the whole coaching kids again. Like even football, people say, will you be a football coach when you're older? I'm like, no, but I'd love to be involved with the team in terms of like team culture, leadership, like standards, like making sure all them things in the background are right, because I think that's what makes a successful team. Obviously you need to have good players and, you know, talent and all that, but I think culture, mindset and all that can go a very long way as well in helping a team get to where they need to be. So definitely that's another area I'd like to look into going forward. Okay,
great. People watching will see you're in your 20 by 20 t-shirt. So the latest chapter in the 20 by 20 movement, and it has been an amazing success from, you know, this small movement, and I think everybody in the country is familiar with it. So the theme this year is about participation, probably very apt amidst COVID, where people have, it's based on the numbers and the surveys, started doing more exercise themselves. So no proving, just moving is the tagline. The prize that we're giving away here in Off the Ball is a pretty cool one. 3 weeks of mentoring from you, effectively. So no pressure. So OTB listeners, Sarah Rowe can mentor you for 3 weeks. The thinking being 21 days is what it takes to form a habit. So if you want to get involved, to enter is very simple. Just send a 10-second video telling us why you need the help. So whatever reason you want, 10-second video, short and sweet. You can tweet it to @OffTheBall. If you don't necessarily want to put it up on Twitter, then that is absolutely fine as well. You can WhatsApp it. So the number to send it to is 087 9180 180. 087 9180 180. And that is all part of 20 by 20, no proving, just moving. And you're going to mentor them.
Yeah.
Excellent. I mean, that's a different prize. It's better than giving away a t-shirt. That's cool.
Yeah, 100%. I'd love that. I'd love to, like I said, work with people and figure it all out and listen to, I suppose, how they get on with the transition of making a new habit, because, you know, we all start with no habits at the start and we all have to start building different ones all the time. So even for me, like I write down things every night, and that wasn't a habit that I was always into, but it's one that I formed. So, you know, there's always things that you can do to better yourself, and I think definitely being physically active and just giving yourself that time and space to yourself, or also viewing exercise in a different light, like, you know, seeing it as leisure or like going to meet a friend for a coffee, like just viewing exercise, not viewing exercise as vigorous, but viewing it as something that you're kind of doing for yourself to be a better version of yourself and give a better version of yourself to all the people around you.
It's great. Well, listen, I'm sure there'll be huge interest. Again, that WhatsApp number, 0879 180 180, or you can tweet us out Off the Ball, just a 10-second video, and we'll pick out a winner, and we'll keep tabs as well. I think on the radio is the plan over the next 3 weeks. So that is the latest chapter in the 20 by 20 movement. And not to confuse you all, but equally, if you're interested, little.ie/20 by 20, there's a questionnaire there, which if you're not sporty, you're not sure what might suit you, there's a questionnaire which might give you an idea what activity suits you best. Because for a lot of people, not just young girls, but boys as well, unless you play soccer or GA or hurling, or maybe rugby in certain schools, a lot of the time for our generation, well, actually, sorry, I'm probably a good deal older than you, but growing up, that was the menu. So if you weren't good at one of those three sports, you could quickly think, sport's not for me.
Yeah, definitely. And I gave an example earlier about my cousin who said to me over quarantine, he said, thanks for giving me the confidence to go for a run. And I was like, interesting that you say confidence. And he said, yeah, because I was never sporty growing up. So I never thought that, like, you know, I was nearly entitled to it. I was kind of like, wow, that's a very interesting perspective. I never saw it like that. So it does show that the perception around it is that you have to be sporty to exercise. That is definitely not what it's about. You know, it's not always a competition. It's, you know, just something you're doing to kind of help yourself physically and more so mentally, and how much you can have a rippling effect on the rest of your day.
Yeah, for sure. To wrap this up and check in on you and the career. So, look, I mean, it's kind of amazing to have played international football, played for the Mayo footballers, and now this adventure over in Australia that you're in your second season of. Melbourne, Collingwood, you were Irish Player of the Year. I think there's 16 Irish players out there at the moment, and you were voted Irish Player of the Year into your second season. That would suggest you're getting to grips with this thing. What aspects of the game are you pretty good at and took to pretty quickly? What aspects of the game are you still grappling with?
I think I get frustrated with the whole, like, the structures and the way you nearly have to stay in the position that you're in. Like, you know how Gaelic football is much more off the cuff. You can kind of move and see fit and go with your instinct, whereas, you know, if you're not playing, you have to play your role always in AFL. And, you know, I'm a winger, so I nearly have to stay on one side of the pitch all the time. But I see space over there. I'm like, I want to go there, but I can't. So things like that is very frustrating for me. And but I think in terms of, I suppose, I've just worked really hard on, you know, physically and, you know, running wise and fitness wise and all that. I made sure I was in the best position possible in terms of that side of things, because I knew that I had so much to learn. And then I suppose for me, I always look for questions, I always look for answers, I'm always trying to learn. And I think that's the thing I have. I look to grow all the time, and I'd say my coach, I had his head wrecked, but I was always asking questions every day, because otherwise, you know, you just kind of, you can presume, you know, but like they see the sport a completely different way to the way we do. And I have to remember that it's not Gaelic football I'm playing, and even though I might see it a certain way, that's not the way they see it. So it's important that I understand all that side of things as well. So as long as I ask questions all the time and keep learning, you know, I'll be on a good path.
You cover more ground in AFLW.
Yeah, you would. You probably, it's a lot more stop start though, as in, like, you wouldn't be, you know, you're more endurance kind of runner. You're like constantly on the move kind of thing, but you're, you know, you're not, it's not the fast twitch kind of stuff that Gaelic football is. So when you come home, then it's important that you understand your transition phase of training. And that's something I would have learned after the first year. I would have approached, like even now through lockdown, I've approached my training in a different manner than I would have last year. I would have kind of thought, I'm coming home, I'm fit, I'm strong, but it was a different type of fitness, and I needed a transition phase. So now I've been lucky enough to have enough people around me to help support me and all that.
So, like, professionalism, pros and cons.
Oh, I don't really see the cons, to be honest. I think there's a lot of pros. It's pardon the pun, but
yeah. Number one, money.
That there's, you know, you've all the people around you and that you need in order to excel in anything you want to do. And, you know, there's that real, like I said, the growth mindset, like, you know, what you want to do even when you finish playing sport, and where do you want to go. So there's always that kind of opportunity. And if you want to put yourself out to, you know, be faster or be stronger, just go to someone in the office, someone can help you. So there's always, and there's that interlink as well between the men's and the women's. And like, you know, one of the men's coaches will be like, I'd be like, oh, I'm struggling with this area in my game, like, come on, we'll go out and have a kick. And you always have that as well. So you support all over the place, and, you know, really educated people in the game around you to help you, and just constant resources. So the resources, the facilities, I suppose, the leadership side of things, you know, the way they teach you, the type of people they want you to be, and how they teach you to work extremely hard, and, you know, the culture of the club and all that. It's all really interesting learning.
Okay, so this is not just a token, let's have a women's department kind of a team. Because I was reading the grand final last year got 53,000 people at it. The highest attendance this year was 35,000. You've jumped even just in your 2 years there from 10 teams to 14 teams. People might not realize, you know, all this is going on. So this sounds like it's gathering real momentum.
Yeah, no, it really is. And like Ireland, they're pushing standards all the time. And it's, like even from the ground roots up, there's like, you know, the girls that are coming into the setup now, you know, they can kick with both feet. They're like really talented, and they've been taught from a really young age. So the standard is only going to get better, and it's going to, I suppose, make it harder nearly for Irish girls to come in and slot in, because the standards will have risen. But even in the last 2 years, it's just definitely getting much more competitive.
How does your striking of the ball compare to a player who's been playing for 15 years?
The kick isn't too bad. It's kind of like more so the bounce of the ball, I find, and also like getting in under the ball and getting really low, because obviously the ball can go either direction, but you actually learn to kind of be able to judge that as well. But the kicking thing is probably Gaelic footballers' strengths over there, definitely. But yeah, like some of them obviously are like really natural at it, but like not everyone is. But you know, you're always taught to use both sides of your body as well. And there's, like I said, there's always people there to kind of help you get better if you have a weakness in some area.
So you have a decision to make, really. I'm sure you're being asked about this a lot. To Peter Lee, the Mayo manager, has, I think you came back last year and played, and things are a bit up in the air now because of COVID. So the GAA season has been pushed to later this year, probably into potentially pre-season territory for Collingwood. So that's a decision. But then regardless, I saw Lahi had said, you know, from 2021, we just don't want players doing both. You know, if you're here for the year, you're playing, you can't just come back towards the end of the league, which is, I think, what you and the other players would have to do when the Australian season finishes up. So long story short, it doesn't sound, certainly once Peter Lie's involved, doesn't sound like you'll be able to juggle the two. And I know Mayo means a lot to you as well. So when do you have to decide what you're doing, and what are your thoughts?
So I have to decide between the 1st and 17th of August, but as of now, it's just because of travel restrictions and all that, it's like still very much so up in the air from kind of both sides. So it's like, I can't really, I suppose, until something is actually placed in front of me, like I can't make any decision. I'm very much a person like that. Until it hits me in the face, I would barely think about it. So as of now, I'm just kind of focusing, I suppose, on my club first, and then focusing next on Mayo, and we'll see after that.
And what, like, I understand it from Peter Lie's point of view. Is it Leahy or Lahi? Excuse me. Yeah, I'm half committing to that each time. I have to hate
that now.
Peter Leahy. My apologies. I do understand where he's coming from. You know, I think 4 Mayo forwards are over there: Aileen Gilroy and the Kelly sisters, Niamh and Grace, and you. So I do understand him saying, well, like, I can't have a league campaign and then 4 players swan back in, and potentially there's other girls who've been playing and suddenly they're not playing. So I get his perspective. Do you feel it's reasonable, unreasonable? Have you spoken about it?
I absolutely understand his perspective as well. Like, you know, we had a conversation as well. It's you know, there was, the communication lines are very much so open, and I completely understand it. Like, it's hard for the girls, and even yourself, like, you don't feel great coming back into a team that's already developed and formed, and especially bringing on younger players as well. You want to encourage them, and you want to get the best out of them, and you don't want us to come back and then to feel in any way intimidated to not push for their spots as well. So, you know, you have to look after all the girls in the team, and, you know, whatever's best for Mayo is best for us, and, you know, that's the way I look at it. So I do completely understand, and at the end of the day, he has to do his job, and whatever's best for Mayo is, you know, I trust that that's what he'll do.
Yeah, I mean, not up to me. I'm thinking pro sport, Australia, Melbourne. I you know, that's what I'd be picking.
Yeah, you'd be like, it's a lovely life and everything. It's not the same as, like, you know, you love being at home as well with your family as well. So, like, there's pros and cons to both sides of it all. And, you know, I think going forward, there will have to be a decision to be made, because the demands of both sports will be a small bit greater, I think, every year. So it's just whether, you know, you make the decision of what you really want, and that's the decision I have to make.
Well, good luck with that.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, no, it's tough. It's tough. You're giving up something probably very special to you either way. So listen, I've kept you for enough time. Thanks so much. Again, the 2020 by Movement, the latest chapter of it is kicking off here. The tagline, the theme is no proving, just moving. And if people want to be mentored by you for 3 weeks, they can send a 10-second video in. They can tweet it out off the ball. They can WhatsApp it 0879 180 180 and get involved that way. Sarah Rowe, thanks a million. Much appreciated.
Thanks a million, Joe.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
I'm listening to the show every morning, and you can say it's grand. It's not grand if you're not on it, though.
OTB's Mount Rushmore.
Some talent in Cork, isn't there? Wow. A few of the GA boys weren't happy, but it was my sporting hero. I was contesting, I think, against Jimmy Barry Murphy. So once you're in that company, everything is good.
Join the debate across all our social channels at Off the Ball.
It's very, very special. Believe me, I think it becomes more special when you're on the couch, because there's something unfortunately inside me that's ultra competitive, and I need to be there.
Catch the live decision-making over the next few months on OTB AM, live every weekday at 7:30 AM on OTB Sports Radio.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
You're welcome back. It is 8:01 on this Wednesday morning. It is Eoin, Sheahan and Gilroy with you right the way through until 10 o'clock this morning. If you're just joining us on the podcast, you've missed Sarah Rowe, who we played out from last night's show. A brilliant conversation there, Ger, talking about the growth mindset that exists in professional sports down under. You definitely can't begrudge anybody for going and getting that and trying to achieve things on an elite level that perhaps they wouldn't ordinarily get to achieve back home. And it's kind of a discussion we've been having recently over the last couple of weeks about elitism in Gaelic games. But when you hear somebody speak so passionately about that, it's very, very hard to feel any way against stopping the train of elitism and getting better and better and self-improvement and all these sort of things.
Imagine wanting to be your best self, Owen.
Yeah.
Who the hell do these young people think they are? Trying to better themselves, learn about the world, learn about themselves, learn new things. Who are these people trying to learn new things? Isn't the stuff that we've always known good enough? Really impressive character, like just the ability to talk to her teammates at this stage of her career and really help them through to become more resilient, to become better players. And just listening to her talk about not really wanting to be a coach, but to be interested in on the culture side of things. Every sports organization in the world is waking up to the importance of culture and having people whose job it is to foment the intangible stuff that seems like it's not science at all, but actually there's a huge science to it. And if I think back to the series that we've done on leadership with Stuart Lancaster, and if you think back to what Pat Lam said when he was on the show just last week, the importance of having everybody believing in what it is that you're trying to do, that doesn't come about because people are just good people or you don't work on it. That's a muscle that you have to work. And she's obviously learning how to do that at the moment. And I think Sarah's going to have a very interesting post-playing career in Irish sport. And the more people who do this, the better it is. Like, we're talking about the 20 by 20 campaign here. And she just had some very simple ways of describing how important it is to just go and do stuff for yourselves. Like, I think the country woke up to that, and I really, really hope that the next time the exercise monitor comes out, people are still doing as much or at least a portion of what they were doing during lockdown.
For sure. You can get that full piece back on the OTB Sports app right now if you missed it. Let's chat a little bit about last night's football, Ger. First off, it's this kind of the latest night we've had of just brilliant game after brilliant game. Like, personally, I chose the Watford-Norwich game earlier on because I felt that was the game that had most riding on it. I clearly picked the wrong game because Chelsea against Palace was amazing. Leicester against Arsenal was a fantastic game late in the night. Surely there's no going back at this point when it comes to football on television. We've now reached saturation point, but the saturation can sometimes be very, very, very fun to watch and very enjoyable.
I mean, in theory, this is an excellent idea, but I think you're probably going to look back on this. A couple of things, right? Last week on this very show, I was literally complaining there was too much football with Nathan. It was like, and after the Everton Spurs game, I don't think anybody would say we need to see every game. Every game needs to have its own TV slot. So, this tiny sample size, which includes a bicycle kick, an overhead bicycle kick, last minute equaliser in the race for the Golden Boot, and an absolute screamer from Zaha, might be, we might be slightly tainted by the quality of what you've seen last night. But in theory, if there are no fans, then this should continue. I think once the fans start coming back, what's the argument for not having all these games midweek at different times staggered? It'd be too hard for fans to get home from some of these games, essentially.
I guess so. But, you talk about TV time slots as if it's the 1990s there, Gerard. There are thousands of television time slots. This is not something that anybody's being forced to watch. I think having this menu of games is an incredible thing. If you want to spend 4 hours watching football of a Tuesday night, you can go ahead and do that. If you want to spend 0 hours watching football of a Tuesday night, that is also an option for you.
It is, but it's not an option for the Premier League. Premier League needs an audience for its football, and Sky, who spend money on acquiring the rights, and BT, who spend money acquiring the rights. Legitimately, what do you think should happen next season? Let's say there's fans back, right? Let's say, and there's no sign of this, but let's say there's fans back, right? What should actually happen in terms of the window when there are football matches?
I think that we could definitely elongate it a little bit more. The 3 o'clock thing is going to go back to the way it was. I think that's too important a thing in British society, and the lower leagues are getting shoved into the corner increasingly as the years go by. The 3 o'clock window has been the case for you going out and watching your local team in England, and that's fair enough, I think, and that might go back to the way it was, the 3 o'clock blackout. But I suppose we've had a 12:30 fixture. I wouldn't be surprised if the Friday night fixture, the 12:30, the 5:30 and the 8 o'clock on the Saturday all become 4 television slots, and then we get into the swing of having 3 television slots then on the Sunday. Whether or not we'll have midweek games remains to be seen, but I think the sympathy that the Premier League will still have for supporters travelling halfway across the country will probably diminish around the weekends. I think fair enough if it's a Wednesday night, but I can say, we started doing Saturday night games for a little while, 5 or 6 this season. I would be surprised if that didn't become a weekly thing next year.
Isn't it true, though, that the midweek games are actually a midweek game at 6 o'clock when big available TV audiences are there on a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday nights? They are prime TV slots. In many ways, that's why the Champions League exploded across Europe. Everybody was at home midweek, nothing on apart from slightly dodgy soap operas all across Europe. And then suddenly you've got the best footballers in the world. And generally for the last 2 decades in most countries, it was free to air, or some game was free to air at some point in almost all the countries. I think Italy was probably behind a paywall for most of it. But if you're the Premier League, you must be looking at the success in the midweek games going, maybe actually we could have 1 game a week, 2 games a week, midweek every week, on the weeks where there's no League Cup or so. For example, the FA Cup, the big clubs trying to get the FA Cup moved to midweek under lights. That would absolutely immediately remind everybody this is a brilliant tournament. It's knockout football under lights, and I think it would really enhance that competition again in a way that I really love the League Cup because it's knockout football under lights until it gets to the end, and by that stage there's a trophy on the line. So I do wonder, I think you're right. I think there's definitely going to be a change in how we are consuming sport in the aftermath of this. And we'll look, when the NBA come out with their technology and exactly what they're going to do to make it seem like as real an occasion as they possibly can, that is going to be very interesting. Because if you can sit at home on your couch, stick your VR headset on, stick your glasses on, or whatever it is you're going to actually be in the arena in Disneyland watching LeBron win a championship, making noise that LeBron can hear, that's going to be a very interesting experience.
How far away is that? Is there actually a company on the line who've actually said we are going to achieve this thing? Because that is the next step, as you say. I find it a little bit freaky in the Etihad Stadium where they do have a Zoom call on a kind of a roll-up big screen behind the goals. That kind of creeps me out a little bit, and I'm not sure how easy that sits with the players.
That's like the early flight simulators where the technology was really very rudimentary, but it was saving lives because it was the closest thing you could get. I think that will evolve. You would hope that next season they won't do that because it looks, as you say, not great. But presumably there is somebody spending a lot of money in research and development to try and get to a point where actually the experience of the players is more akin to the experience of what it was actually like. The crowd noise definitely has improved beyond. It's come on leaps and bounds. So that's with like 4 weeks of this now. Are we into 4 weeks of this? So
about that.
If they can improve that quickly with the quality of the crowd noise, like at what point do you start making the crowd noise real for the players? Because still when you flick over to the other channel and there's no crowd noise, it's like, that's not great, you know? Like,
have you done any? Have you watched any games without crowd noise? Because it seems that this is the norm now, where everybody's watching it. Like it's very entertaining spectacle sometimes.
I flick between them just to kind of see what the difference is. The quality of the microphones isn't so good that you're actually hearing enough of the conversation. And Frank Lampard made a point about the everybody being the camera, because there isn't 40,000 people screaming at you to scream at the referee or to scream at the touchline officials. So I wonder what would happen if they faked all that. And maybe you can't fake it because it actually might have a material impact on the game. It clearly has a material impact on the game. Sorry, it obviously has. We've seen the evidence from the Bundesliga stat that hometown decisions don't happen anymore, and now there is no crowd. So I think there's going to be a lot of unintended consequences coming from what's happening at the moment. But more matches on TV ultimately is, I assume, what the broadcasters will ask for, and they're probably in a very strong bargaining position when it comes to the next round of negotiation for rights, saying we have this data now from when these matches were on at different kickoff times, and we want this kickoff time, we want this kickoff time. And to be honest, I think the clubs are probably going to go along with that.
Sheahan, good morning.
Morning, lads. How are you keeping?
All good, all good. What's going on this morning? I presume you're leading with Arsenal and Leicester last night?
Indeed, the big game from last night. It was decent. I hear what you're saying about the crowd noise and that sort of thing, but there was a couple of moments last night where players really screamed. I think it was possibly Dani Ceballos, or maybe, I don't know who. It was one of the Arsenal players anyway who was crossing the ball in, and he failed to reach his target and absolutely screamed. And Pulisic had a similar thing in the Chelsea game where he quite evidently swore on the channel as well. They've given up apologising, I think, as well for the bad language, because it's just become so commonplace. But I actually prefer watching it without the crowd noise. I think it's more of an interesting spectacle. We'll get back to the day someday where there's actually proper crowd noise, so enjoy it while it lasts.
Absolutely. There was actual football last night, other than the television spectacle that we're all so obsessed with.
Indeed, yeah, that late Jamie Vardy equaliser away to Arsenal, salvaging what could prove probably a vital point for Leicester, you'd imagine, in the race for Champions League football. Brendan Rodgers' side drawing 1-1 at the Emirates Stadium. Arsenal's cause wasn't helped by the sending off of Eddie Nketiah. He wasn't long on the pitch either, 4 minutes after his second half introduction, receiving his marching orders after a VAR check and the referee checking as well. Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang had given the Gunners the lead in that game. Arsenal boss Mikel Arteta was frustrated, speaking after the game.
We have to learn as well that when you play against this opposition, you have to kill them. When you have them, you have to kill them. And then it's the fourth time since I've been here that we play with 10 men. And it's not possible. For that long period to play like this against this opposition, you're going to suffer. I didn't like the goal we conceded, but it's part of what it is.
Yeah, not happy there, Mikel Arteta. Leicester City, meanwhile, dropping one place to fourth after Chelsea won 3-2 at Crystal Palace. Substitute Tammy Abraham scoring what proved to be the deciding goal at Sellers Park. Palace came very close to an equaliser in that game. Scott Dan with a header off the inside of the post right in the end of injury time as well in that match. Chelsea boss Frank Lampard says it's still a work in progress for him and his team.
We know it's tight in and around us, and it's nice mentally to be third for maybe a short period, but that's what it is. And yeah, I mean, I think the game could have been more comfortable for us tonight. Then we could have lost those 3 points and probably got one at the end. So maybe at this crucial period, it's nice to dwell on the 3 points, but my job as well is to look at ways that we can get better, and we still can.
Norwich City's relegation could be confirmed as soon as Saturday, following their 2-1 defeat at Watford yesterday. Meanwhile, Danny Welbeck scoring the winner in that game with a bicycle kick, with Watford coming from behind to earn the 3 points and move them 4 clear of the relegation places. That's 4 points clear. They're still in 17th in the table. West Ham could ease their own relegation worries tonight with the win at home to Burnley. 3 points would move Dave Moyes' side 7 points clear of the drop zone. Wolves can keep the pressure up on 5th place Manchester United with a victory at Sheffield United. Manchester City will have to put their Southampton defeat behind them when they entertain Newcastle. Those 3 games get underway at 6 p.m. this evening. Then at 8:15, champions Liverpool make the trip to Brighton. Adam Lallana, meanwhile, unlikely to play another game for Liverpool, with manager Jurgen Klopp Reluctant to put the soon-to-be out-of-contract midfielder at risk of injury, the 32-year-old signed a short-term deal to keep him at Anfield until the end of this extended campaign, but he will depart after that. Meanwhile, you can keep up to date on all the live scores tonight from those Premier League games on the new OTB Sports app. You can download it for free right now in the App Store or the Play Store. It's reported by The Athletic this morning that the International Football Association Board will allow teams to make 5 subs per game rather than 3 for all of next season. That temporary measure was brought in after the COVID-19 lockdown. Brentford came from behind to beat Charlton 2-1 last night to move within 2 points of the Championship's automatic promotion places. The race for a playoff spot is wide open after Blackburn won 3-2 against 6th placed Cardiff, and Fulham in 4th got past Nottingham Forest by 1-0. The bottom 2 played out a 1-1 draw as Luton and Barnsley couldn't be separated. Reading's game with Huddersfield meanwhile ended goalless. Today's action kicks off at 3 o'clock as relegation strugglers Middlesbrough go to Millwall. With tabletoppers Leeds not playing until tomorrow, West Brom can move to the summit by avoiding defeat against Derby County this evening. Clubs in the GAA will be allowed to report any alleged breaches of inter-county training before September 14th directly to Croke Park. The GAA has hardened its stance over the issue to allow inter-county stars to be available for the club game for county championships. Meanwhile, some boxing news this morning. A Katie Taylor-Delphine Pursoon rematch does appear to be imminent. Last week, promoter Eddie Hearn revealed talks had taken place about the Belgian replacing Amanda Serrano as Taylor's August opponent. Both Hearn and Taylor have alluded to a rematch on social media over the past 24 hours. Taylor beat Pursoon by a majority decision in a controversial bout that was in June of last year. There's a 7-race card at Gilroy Park this evening, lads, with the first off there at 4:25, while an 8-race meeting at Bellewstown gets underway at 1 o'clock. And finally, some brilliant news for big darts fan Ger Gilroy this morning. The PDC Darts Tour resumes this afternoon with the Summer Series event in Milton Keynes. World champion Michael van Gerwen is among those back in action after missing the recent home tour. Keegan Brown also plays, having spent time working for the NHS during the coronavirus lockdown.
Quick comment, Ger?
No comment. Brexit down the pub.
Thanks, Shane. Let's tell you what's coming up this morning on OTB AM. So we've got Michael Verney coming up in just a moment to chat through the situation in the GAA at the moment, with clubs being asked to report training ban breaches. After that then, we've got a little bit of Danny and Quinny. This is the latest How's the Head coming up. It is an OTB Sports exclusive, and on the OTB Sports app it came out for the first time yesterday. That is Danny O'Reilly in conversation with Alan Quinlan. Kenny is Kenny Cunningham. He'll be with us at 9 o'clock. He's going to do his Liverpool depth chart. Where do Liverpool need to strengthen? Do they need to strengthen? He'll be going position by position with us after 9 o'clock, and also getting into last night's action as well. And Graham Hunter will be with us at 9:30 to chat through the situation with Lionel Messi. Could he possibly be leaving the Nou Camp? And we'll also chat a little bit about Real Madrid, who've been incredibly consistent over the last couple of weeks. Do they potentially have a blueprint of how you move forward without their superstar? We're going to get Graham Hunter's take on all of that later on. You can tweet us at Off The Ball or comment on the stream on YouTube or on Facebook if that's where you're watching. Just to tell you that OTB AM is live in association with Gillette every morning. Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters. Right, Michael Verney is with us. Michael, good morning.
Eoin, how are you?
Very well. The Irish Examiner in front of me this morning leads with a headline saying GAA clubs asked to report training ban breaches. It's a story by Eoin Cormacan, and I'm just going to read out the first 2 paragraphs here. GAA clubs do not have to possess evidence of a county team breaching the September 14 training ban to make a complaint to Croke Park. Clubs have been told to bypass their county board and report incidences or suspicions of collective inter-county training directly to Croke Park. So what we are depending on here, Michael, is if there is breaches in the training regime and the September 14th training rule, we expect people within a club, within a county, to actually make a complaint. How likely or unlikely is that in your view?
Yeah, it's a difficult one. You're essentially kind of snitching on your own, whatever about, talk maybe within the club or talk around the county about whether a team is training collectively or whatever the story is, to actually make a formal complaint and potentially land some of your own club players and potentially land people that you know in a lot of hot water. Is it likely to happen? I'd say there'd have to be a fair degree of unrest for it to happen. I don't see it as that likely to happen. I think by making the U-turn, and in fairness to the GA, there was a total U-turn on their stance, and to be fair to them, it was probably a harder thing to do than they probably could have just toed the party line that they were towing Fair play to them for actually rowing back on what they had previously said. But I think most of the unrest that would have been amongst, club members, club managers and things like that is probably dissipated a good bit. Well, it should have, because basically it's totally banned now for counties to be doing anything. So I think that the likelihood of counties doing things, there's probably still going to be some counties doing a few bits and pieces, even though they shouldn't be. With the likelihood of clubs being, as put out as some of them felt they were, and club managers, club officials without club players, it's a lot less likely now. So it's probably a lot less likely that they're going to be making a formal complaint, particularly, as I said, if they're going to be landing people that they know, people that they meet regularly. Like, imagine a club secretary having to send an email, and it's basically going to be the club chairman or the county chairman within that county that's going to be one of the people that's probably going to be reprimanded. It's probably very unlikely, I would say.
Is this a better situation in your view than the GEA coming out and saying, let the inter-county players train with the inter-county team and let them play matches with the club team? Because at least in that scenario, there's control and we know exactly what is happening. In this situation, we don't know what's going on, but at least there will be probably more time spent with the club, and that's only just a guess on my part. Like, which of those two evils would you prefer? The knowing in a sort of better or in a worse situation, or the unknowing in a better situation?
I think, to be honest with you, like, county players, like, we've had full access to our county players in Borough, and I know that all clubs in Offaly have, and many other counties have as well. But at least it's hard for it to be a level playing field, but at least it seems that most counties and most clubs are now off a level playing field, and that they're going to have access to their players, or they should have more access to it. Like, it was probably frowned upon somewhat for county players to be away from their clubs over the past maybe, couple of months, maybe 8 to 10 weeks. But at least now, they have to be there. There's some sort of directive there. They are actually officially, contravening rules. They're breaking rules. And if I was a club manager, or if I was a club official, and we were after putting all years into the development of players who are like our club players who are now playing county, at least there's something there for us. It would be a tough stance to take, to actually go and send an email and basically land people in hot water, but at least it's something there for them. And I think this is a much better situation than what we had before, like rumours of things, all sorts of rumours, and most of it, a lot of it based on fact of things going on behind closed doors. At least there's some sort of an avenue for the club to go down if they feel they've been very hard done by. And I think, just from even chatting to people, there does seem to be far more of these county players. I can't say anecdotally that it's 100%, but they are back with their clubs now. And I think there'd be a fair bit of relief for a lot of these county players as well, because it's very, very hard to serve two masters. And I know you had Rory Gallagher on last week, the Derry manager, former Donegal manager and coach as well. The players were being put in an awful position. Like, imagine, you're being dragged, we'll say, to your county train. You do want to be at county train, obviously, if it's called, but you also want to be at your club train. You feel like you're letting lads down, and at least, like, the mental kind of torture that was going on in some county players' heads, at least that should be taken away now, and they should be focus solely on the club. Listen, it'd be interesting to see what do we hear over the next while. I haven't heard anything since the directive was put down from Croke Park about anyone breaking the rules. But it'd be interesting to see when people start getting itchy feet, particularly in August and September, even before September 14. It'd be interesting to see what we hear. But at least there's some sort of an avenue there for clubs that they can go down. Whether they take that hard line to actually go down is another story.
What's the difference, Michael, between the current situation we're in and the situation some counties will reach in September 14th, where there will still be county championships to play, but suddenly the inter-county player is allowed to go and train with their county? Is that suddenly okay? Like, is just because the rule is different, is it now not okay for a player to go and train with their inter-county team? Will there be no uproar whatsoever come September 14th when they still have club games to play and the club player will still be going off training with their county because that's what the rule says?
Yeah, obviously different structures in different counties. I know some counties will be finished a couple of weeks even before September 14th.
But in the case of the counties that are going on beyond September 14th?
Yeah, so like should they be? You mean like should they be training, or what was the question
like
exactly?
What's the situation going to be like? I mean, like if you're saying that you've got lads back with your club at the moment from the county team, like all seems well and good, I'd imagine. I'm sure you'll even give a pass for a phone call or Zoom meetings for that county player. Like what will the club manager, the club player say come September 14th if they're here in a county where they still have to play club games beyond that September 14th team? Because in all those counties, that is going to be the business end of the club championship. And all of a sudden, it's legal for that player to go off with their county team.
Yeah, and it's probably going to be in the situation at that stage where you're really, really in the thick of the club championship as well, and you really need your club players there for, be it a quarter-final, semi-final, or preparing for a county final. So, yeah, so I suppose it's one of these things in the GA that they're just going to have to kind of cross that bridge when they come to it. But I know that county managers, if September 14th is that date, they're going to have everything gung-ho. And more than when we went back training, the first day we could go back training, everything was back for that day, and then we were training 2 days later, and we were training 2 days later, and we were playing a game. The minute we could play a game, we were back playing a game. And inter-county managers are going to be the same, because they're going to have, well, probably 4 weeks before their first league game, and then maybe 6 weeks before championship. It's going to be messy. There's no point in saying any different, but I think the club players and the club managers will have had a good shot at it. And I think, like, even having them train twice with the club, and maybe once with the club and twice with the county at that stage, there'll be a lot more leniency from clubs at that stage, because they've had them basically for, the guts of 12 weeks at that stage. There's going to be a lot of jiggery pokery as well, and there's probably going to be a few rows and a few disagreements, but I think the club players will have had and club managers will have had a good shot at that stage, and they're just going to have to communicate. Communication can be a tricky thing within the GAA, and I think,
Michael, why couldn't they do that now? Why couldn't they do that before September 14th? Like, just playing devil's advocate here, why did there need to be a ban on inter-county training? Like, if there's going to need to be communication after September 14th, why could there not be communication now and put the trust into the county teams to actually delegate towards the clubs, to give players back to the clubs whenever? There may be a very obvious answer to that question, I accept, but just being devil's advocate, like, you look at October the 11th, you've got your Carlow Senior Football Championship final, your Meath Senior Hurling Championship final. What about the Carlow and Meath inter-county managers in football and hurling respectively? Like, that last month is going to be a nightmare for them trying to take players back from the club, given the uproar that we've seen over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, I suppose that month will be a nightmare, but for the club managers, if the county had been allowed to run roughshod, which in many instances they had, there's potential for 3 months to be an absolute disaster. And I know anecdotally in some counties that, a predominant football county that had their players 4 nights a week, and they weren't near their clubs at all. So, like, that's what would happen if you let it happen for a 2 to 3 month period, and they basically wouldn't be with their clubs. Club championship would essentially be non-existent for those players. They'd be back training with their club, the training session before championship games, and they play the championship game. Then they've gone back to the county, and the same thing would happen again. So at least now, like, there's something in place that the counties can't. It can't be like that runaway train where they're just going to be off at their county the whole time. They have to be. They're supposed to be with their club now. That's the only real thing on. I think it's shortening the window for the county to kind of dominate, if you know what I mean. Like, they shouldn't be with their counties now. They're not supposed to be. Whereas loosely, if we'd left it kind of loose, where they're not supposed to be there, but there's no sanctions, counties would just do what they, you know yourself, you'll do what you get away with. Whereas you can't get away with that now, or, well, anecdotally, you shouldn't get away with it.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if anybody does actually try it and get away with it, and what those sanctions end up being. Because if it's a county chairman taking one for the county where he gets a short suspension, and that county goes on to win All Ireland, like, the night that the cup comes home, that county chairman's going to be shouldered high because he took the fall. The county team was training 4 nights a week. Away you go, glory, whichever county that is. In terms of, like, this scenario obviously is in response to a global pandemic, right? And we've seen that there is the possibility to enact new laws very quickly and set up new structures very quickly. Is there any sense that long-term planning or lessons are being learned here? Because it seems like they kind of blundered into the no sanctions. Oh, we will actually have sanctions. And even still, I think it's it's a really weird scenario to suddenly put everything, and it might be a stroke of genius, put it back on the individual club members. Imagine being the club secretary who has to hit send on the email, ratting out your own county. Like, just imagine. So I think they've done a brilliant job here where no one's actually more than likely going to do that. And there's plausible deniability from everybody in the hierarchy going, well, we gave you the chance. It's up to you guys now to police this. And maybe that's what you're supposed to do in a democratic organization. I'm getting to my question here. What are we going to learn into the future? How much of this can we transmit and do next season and the year after that?
Yeah, I think it's kind of difficult because it wasn't their initial stance. So that's they obviously maybe didn't see it as a problem, or maybe they don't see the runaway train of the county game as a problem. I think people coming out and talking and all the unrest that's around a lot of clubs around the country not having access to their best player or their best players and players that they put years of coaching into. There was a lot of unrest all around these different counties. People came out and talked, and it's amazing how quickly things could change when some high-profile names came out and basically said what most clubs were thinking, or most people within clubs. But as you say, like the GA's change of stance was a reaction to that, and they basically put all the responsibility back on the clubs. And as you say, if they don't get any complaints or anything like that, and there's some unrest, but they don't get complaints, they've put all the responsibility on the club. I think some people probably will. There probably will be some people that won't care about whether they're going to fall out with anyone or not like that. If they feel that their club has been done an injustice, they will send an email. But it's just interesting to see, like, maybe this will be one of the first tentative steps towards a split season, something that maybe has been, talked about in some circles within the GA or within the GA hierarchy, but it's not something that ever realistically looked like happening. Maybe this could be the first tentative step to something like that happening, when they realised, okay, we let the county and club kind of run on together, and it just didn't work. It just was not working. Clubs were going mad. People with county chairman were being put in very, very awkward positions. So maybe it's the first tentative step to something like that happening, but I still think that a split season is probably a good bit away. But it's funny what you said, Ger. It's amazing as well how quickly things can happen when they have to happen, and how rules can go out the window, and it doesn't need to go to special congress, or it doesn't need to go to normal GA congress every year. When they're put in an unprecedented scenario, they can change things, not on a whim right like that, but they can change things very quickly. So maybe a split season isn't as far away as I think. I still think it's a good bit away. Hopefully this is the first maybe tentative step to that.
Well, can we tease that out? Because what actually, it's funny, because I fully agree with you. If Michael Dignan hadn't said what he said, I don't think there would have been a change. Maybe somebody else might have come out and rallied the troops. But Dignan was so brilliant and so forceful and so clear in what he was saying, and nobody could disagree with it. And Colin O'Rourke actually backed it up fairly quickly afterwards as well. But if people now say this is working, this actually really works for clubs, then surely that can be the momentum behind it too. Like, I don't think it's that ludicrous to think that Dignan could be the next president of the GA on the back of what we're seeing at the moment, or a Dignan candidate, somebody who comes in and says, this is what's going to happen. The only thing I'm running on, the only thing I care about is splitting the season, and we're going to have a festival of intercounty in late summer, and it's going to be a festival of club early summer, or whatever the dates are, and then everybody gets behind it. Like, what actually has to happen for the thing that we're looking at now, which seems to be working relatively well with a few kinks, for that to be the future? Why would we go back to what we've already had?
I suppose, well, a lot of it is probably, some of it is obviously to do with finances and having your marquee games, the games that everybody's eyes are on, the county game having going on in the height of summer. There's a dangerous is the wrong word, but given the clubs the height of the summer now, and I suppose the best weather in Ireland, obviously that's changeable, is probably a dangerous thing in a way from the GA, because club players are going to absolutely love this. Basically being the focal point, in late July, August, probably early September as well. If club players get used to that, it'll be something they're probably going to find, they'll find it hard to relinquish next season, or be it the season after, or whenever that happens. I don't see this is hopefully this is hopefully the first step towards the bigger picture and things that have been talked about ad nauseum for the last 10 years. The club game been basically kind of edged out of the GAA, and club players not been able to play league games, not been able to play championship games, not been able to train with their club. This is probably it's a good basis for a template going forward. Whether it is the actual template going forward will be interesting to see. Maybe the GAA will just say, okay, this was an unprecedented season. We're going to kind of go back to far more what the norm was. But the norm was so distorted in terms of, you know, the club, the basis of the GAA, that was basically been undercut. So hopefully this is the first tentative steps. I wouldn't be so sure whether that is going to be the first tentative steps to something like that happening, but I'm hopeful.
Who will decide that? Does that power rest with the professional staff in Croke Park, or does that power actually rest with the county board chairman and the president, essentially, the elected part of the organisation? Who will decide that?
Well, as you saw, Ger, even with Michael Dignan talking and the likes of Colin O'Rourke talking as well, decisions obviously usually will be coming from Croke Park and from the GAA. But when people, you know, raise, you know, things that are emotional to people and clubs all around the country, things can change quite quickly. So I would have imagined that there'd be an awful lot of feedback coming back to Croke Park, coming back to John Horn, over how the club championships went. Were county chairman happy with them? Were clubs happy with them? And if Croke Park are lobbied by 25 county chairmen or chairpersons and say, listen, this was absolutely brilliant for our county. This was absolutely brilliant for our clubs. Our clubs are back thriving again. This is the way forward. Then Croke Park are put in a position where, okay, 2/3 of the county chairman, county chairpersons within a county, they're demanding this. They're after seeing what it's doing for clubs and what it can do for the county teams as well. And then maybe that's something that they're running with. You know, but you have to probably, county chairman and chairpersons probably have to lobby Croke Park, let them know maybe how well this went, and see maybe that's the sort of way. It can't just be the county chairman or chairpersons, and it can't just be Croke Park. It has to be kind of the two of them probably coming together. But I'd say if they lobby them and say, like, our county is thriving now, the clubs are thriving, people are so happy, county players are delighted to be back at their clubs. They're delighted to have this dedicated time with them, not in the muck and scrap in winter as well. It's probably the two of them coming together for something like that to happen, I would think.
Listen, Michael, thanks a million for taking the call this morning.
Cheers, Owen. Cheers, Ger.
Michael Verney of the Irish Independent there. Right, we have teamed up with 20 by 20 to give our female listeners a chance to win 3 weeks of training advice and mentoring from Mayo and AFL legend Sarah Rowe. To enter our competition, just send us a 10-second video telling us what training you'll be doing and why you should win. WhatsApp the video into the OTB WhatsApp number, which is 0879 180 180. That's 0879 180 180. It's all part of the No Proving, Just Moving campaign, which is encouraging women to get active, and is the latest chapter in the 20 by 20 movement, which is hooked around the benefits of participation, highlighting that being active and moving is a gift only you can give yourself. Time for the papers.
OTB AM.
OTBsports.com leads with Cian Fahey's article ranking the most valuable quarterback contracts in the NFL after Patrick Mahomes' $500 million deal with the Kansas City Chiefs was announced in the last couple of days. You've got they're heading in the right direction as well. That's Kenny Cunningham on Lampard's Chelsea. He'll be with us to chat a little bit more about the late fixture last night in the Premier League after 9 o'clock. The problem for Spurs is the same as it was 6 months ago, he says, as well. And Chelsea survived Palace scare as Norwich edged towards the trapdoor. An incredible game last night between Chelsea and Crystal Palace. That is OTBsports.com, and plenty more on the site besides that as well.
Yeah, so next up is going to be the Irish Independent for me this morning, and they have Quinn not in the frame for League of Ireland position. Interim Deputy CEO had been viewed as a leading candidate for newly created internal role, so a lot of FAI politics on the back pages. Apparently an explosive board meeting last night, so the old Irish joke about what's the first thing on the agenda, the split, it doesn't appear as if there's a unified plan within the FAI for what's going to happen next. So we'll keep a very close eye on that. And Six Nations playing down expectations of imminent CVC windfall. This is exactly as we predicted. Jimmy Burke, is that what it was? He's going around telling everybody, shut up. Get that car, get out of town. Stop that. We're not getting any money. Shut up. This money's not coming. This is straight out of Goodfellas. This is exactly what we would expect to happen.
I'll ask you the same question. Who benefits from this story?
All the unions who are currently laying off staff, forcing pay cuts through on their players, and negotiating contracts with everybody. Like that's who benefits.
Is Bernard Laporte? What's his interest in players' unions? And how does his negotiating position change? Is he solely invested in this figure from CVC being as high as possible?
I guess if you are telling your meeting that you're doing a great bit of business in the middle of this pandemic, then you look pretty good, right? Like, so you're shoring up your power base with within the French union. Bear in mind, the French don't pay their players, right? True. So the French clubs are the ones who will be having those conversations. Rog was talking about being on chômage and part chômage and only being allowed a couple of hours a day in the building. So I guess he looks great in the time of difficulty. He's arriving with this massive check, and the unions where you do pay your players are like, ixnay on the money say.
The Irish Examiner this morning leads with that story I've already mentioned about GAA clubs asked to report training ban breaches themselves. You've got a photograph there of Wilfred Zaha and Reece James. Hands off is the caption on that. European football clubs, meanwhile, face €4 billion revenue hit. That's football clubs all around the continent expecting to lose all that revenue due to the pandemic. Six Nations dismiss inaccurate claims over potential share sale, which is that story on CVC. While Jurgen Klopp has spoken about Sean Cox, I can think of no greater example of what a leader is than Sean's wife Martina. And Colin Corkery has done an interview here as well. I woke up in intensive care with Bishop Buckley praying away. He was scolded by Dr. Con Murphy for unwittingly risking his life by playing in the 1999 county final. He was speaking on Tomás O'Shea's weekly live stream podcast.
That'd be a bit freaky, wouldn't it? He was like driving home, blacked out. Next thing he wakes up and there's a bishop praying over him. It's like, things must have gone a bit hairy for me. The London Times, brave new world for England. So they have a new captain, and they are going to have a pace attack, apparently, and all pace attack is going to put two fast bowlers out together for the first time. Women's sport may host fans, so this is plans apparently from the British government to allow fans back at women's sport first to try and give a boost to the sport, and also as an experiment as well, and inquiry over gymnast abuse. This is the story from the documentary the other night that multiple gymnasts at the elite level suffered abuse at the hands of coaches.
The Irish Times this morning leads with a match report from Selhurst Park last night. Chelsea hang on to maintain Champions League push. You've also got match reports from the other couple of games as well. Vardy's late strike denies 10-man Arsenal, and Welbeck bicycle kick seals vital win for Watford. So that is the Irish Times this morning. And also inside you've got Keith Duggan, who's done a piece on how Herbert Chapman's futuristic view set him apart. Legendary Arsenal manager was way ahead of his time on and off the pitch in every way. And Klopp to rest Lallana ahead of transfer. He has no plans to rest any other players to prepare for next season. And out of favour, Stones could leave City soon. So that is one of the other stories to watch on the transfer market over the next little while.
The Star this morning, Carlo Kane's story, GAA turn up heat on panels. He says a more hardline stance by the GAA since a conference call with county chairpersons last Friday appears to have led to some inter-county managers backing off. Under the charge of discrediting the association, county teams can be kicked out of the championship, fined, or have league points deducted, with suspension starting at 8 weeks. So this is obviously in response to, as we've been talking about earlier on, the pressure that they came under from various commentators, essentially suggesting that having no sanctions meant that those rules didn't exist. And then a great story from Mark McCadden and John Fallon here. Fireworks for FAI. There were fireworks at the FAI's board meeting last night after the two most senior elected officials mobilised UEFA to sort out issues over alleged government interference. President Jerry McEnany and Vice President Paul Cook flagged their concerns to the European governing body's National Association's Director Zoltan Lakovic on Monday. It's understood a robust discussion over the UEFA call ensued at last night's board meeting. The sticking points in the memorandum of understanding are increasing the number of independents on the 12-person board from 4 to 6, with independent chairman Roy Barrett having the casting vote and retiring council members passing 10 years of service. So this is all part of the bailout. The government said, you're going to have to do this. We're going to bail you out. And don't use the word bailout, but it was a bailout. And the FAI said, yeah, okay, we sign up to changing the corporate governance, which has, up to this point, been a little bit lax, I think it's fair to say, to the point where it's now needing a bailout. They were the conditions of the bailout. And it looks now as if maybe they're going to appeal to UEFA to see if they may not have to meet all of the criteria. So this is going to be a very interesting story to see. And it's a bit of a challenge for the new sports minister. Barely his feet under the desk. And it's like, right, get the FAI in here. I need to have a chat with them.
It's going to be interesting as well. Do you carve your own way out? Do you follow the mould of Shane Ross and keep beating the FAI because this is the agreement that you made earlier in the year? So, I'm sure if you've got a new ministry, if you've got a new junior ministry, you want to put your own mark on it. But at the same time, there's been a lot of groundwork put in already. Then on the other side of the coin, you've got, do you keep the FAI happy? Because it seems like a lot of the top brass don't want this anymore, the memorandum of understanding.
Public money. Public money. That's what the minister needs to remember. There's public money going in. They're going to have to pay it back at some point. And then, but if there's any public money going in, this has to all be done properly. And just because UEFA think one thing, if it's our money going in there, it has to be managed properly.
I wonder, is this why UEFA always advise or have rules against government interference? That it actually almost makes their life a little bit easier if they don't have to deal with that fact?
Of course.
The back page of the Irish Mirror is Golden Buttes. Vardy saves Foxes and stays clear of rival Aubameyang. He's on 22 goals at the moment. Aubameyang's on 20. Lampard playing on was the right call, rather. They obviously played on for after Gary Cahill suffered a pretty bad hamstring injury. He was hurt trying to stop Willian. Chelsea went in and scored their first goal of the night. What a goal as Danny goes head over heels. Brilliant winner from the Watford striker last night. And United get a deadline for Jadon. Borussia Dortmund have set Manchester United an August 10th deadline to complete the signing of Jadon Sancho. So it seems that they have a slight acceptance that if a big bid is going to come in, they will sell Jadon Sancho. But they're looking for £90 million, it says here, which I thought was £120 million before the pandemic. So if this report is to be believed, like it says, they don't want to sell Sancho on the cheap. They want £90 million for him, despite the massive hit in the transfer market. Like, mid-pandemic, do Manchester United have £90 million to spend on Jadon Sancho? They might do, if that is their only piece of business.
Yeah, I mean, is it relatively good value for a very young English player who you're going to get 5 to 7 years out of, and then you can possibly flog on and get your money back? Is that how Man United are looking at that? It certainly fits the age profile of the players that they've been buying. The Sun is next up for me this morning. Top Gun Vardy, Jamie stuns Arteta and boosts Fox's top 4 bid. And then they've got a Sarah Rowe interview. And Son going prime time. Hugo Lloris and Son Heung-min's amazing bust-up was filmed by a stunned Amazon camera crew. So Amazon obviously making a documentary about that. And Stones pep talk. Pep Guardiola will talk to John Stones over his Manchester City future at the end of the season. The 47.5 million defender faces Newcastle tonight, but is out of favour at City. So they just don't have any good defenders at the moment. Like, for all the money they've spent, Manchester City not in a great position when it comes to their centre-backs.
No, well, unless Eric Garcia does step up to be an absolute star. He's still young. And we were having this conversation the other day about young centre-backs. It is hard to make it very early in the Premier League if you're only 20, 21 years of age. Eric Garcia is of that age, so hopefully from Manchester City's perspective he's on the upward curve. Back page of the Irish Daily Star is FAI civil war. Tensions erupt over President's UEFA dealings. So friction erupting at the FAI board meeting last night, as already mentioned. 10-man Gunners foiled by Vardy is the headline on the 1-1 draw between Arsenal and Leicester. And an interesting line here from Rory Keane as well. South African big guns lined up to join Pro 14. So we could get used to saying the Pro 16 now, the Cheetahs and the Kings could be cut loose to be replaced by the Bulls, Lions, Sharks and Stormers, which would seriously bolster the competition coming from the Southern Hemisphere in the Pro 16. That could be an interesting one. There's going to be change aplenty in rugby after this is all done, and it looks like it's only a matter of time before we get more South African rugby involvement in our lives, whether it's Six Nations with South Africa or Pro 16 with extra South African teams.
I mean, that would completely transform the Pro 14. It would make it the best rugby competition in the world by a mile. Like, it wouldn't even be close. It'd be far better than the Premiership. It'd be far better than maybe the top 14 in France. It would be good enough rugby. But all of a sudden, that would be absolutely sensational, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I'm not sure does it make it the best rugby competition in the world, though. Like, are we not in a situation still at the moment where it's...
I'm not talking international rugby, the best club competition.
Yeah, best club competition. But, like, I mean, I would say that the Premiership and top 14 would still say they would have a better product. Like, it's not just about the teams that are involved. It will actually take a bit of time for this to get up and running, for us to get to know the other teams, for rivalries to potentially simmer, for Leinster to not have a huge gap over the rest, which is currently the case, let's face it. I think it probably takes more than a couple of extra South African teams to turn it into the best league in the world. It definitely improves it, don't get me wrong.
These are the best South African teams.
Yeah, I get that.
African teams with the players who you will know.
Yeah, which is kind of important. I think like the Cheetahs and Kings have really done nothing for the competition. It's fair
and they
to
won't
say.
get hammered in every game. That's the thing. Like, so all of a sudden you're going down and you're seeing the World Cup winners or half the World Cup winners, and they're beating Leinster, and then they're coming over here and Leinster are beating them. And I think by week 3 we're like, oh, this is really good.
The other half of the World Cup winners are playing for Munster.
The Guardian next. Broad may give way to Wood in fiery welcome for West Indies. Ben Stokes' debut outing as captain could see veteran paceman left out of first test. So cricket is back. Going to have a lot of cricket stories in the English papers in the next while. David James getting sacked was damaging, but I still want to be a manager. And Pulisic strikes as Chelsea secure a nervy win over Palace. Do you remember early in the season, the Athletic did a piece where Christian Pulisic was a bit of a joke figure? He's too slight. He's never going to make it. Who is this damn Yank? Was essentially the tone of the piece. That obviously people speaking on the condition of anonymity. It's a very American thing where you survey staff at NFL clubs or NBA clubs, and they do it all the time, and they're happy to put that out there. And Pulisic has been brilliant over the last 8 weeks, and actually, kind of from the end of January, he's been really good.
He has. But this has been one of the consequences of the massive break in football. And Chelsea have had almost 2 of these breaks where they couldn't make any transfers because they obviously had a transfer ban last year and nobody was making any transfers during this COVID break. So they had the kids and they had to trust the kids after 2 pretty long pre-seasons. I think it's the case with a number of other clubs. Like, ordinarily, if you've got a 3-month break in football, you've got Manchester United taking out the big fat checkbook and signing whoever they can. In their particular case, they just had to get Mason Greenwood to bulk up further, to push himself closer to being a starter in the team. And it is the best time in recent years, certainly I would say in the last 10-15 years, to be a young kid trying to make it in the Premier League, because you've been given your chance over the last couple of weeks. They've all taken their chance, is the other thing. Like, you look at Bukayo Saka last night for Arsenal, transforming from a left back into what looks like an incredible right-sided forward. Like, England are looking incredibly good for the next few years. Are we in danger of seeing them potentially go close to winning the Euros next year? Certainly when it comes to the Qatar World Cup, of actually winning the thing. Like, does a country around the world have a more exciting set of attackers, I wonder? I'm not sure they do. Like,
Are they all too young? Are they just too young? Is it like the World Cup after that?
Well, potentially. So, like, I typed up the ages last night. So you got Mason Greenwood and Bukayo Saka, who are 18. You got Callum Hudson-Odoi, is 19. You've got Phil Foden and Jadon Sancho, who are both 20. And then outside of the front 3, then you've got Mason Mount, who's 21. Trent Alexander-Arnold's only 21. For a 2022 World Cup, the elder statesmen will be like Raheem Sterling and Marcus Rashford. It's just central midfielders. Do they have the central midfielders to go and win a World Cup? You could argue that perhaps Liverpool don't have the central midfield that Manchester City have, and yet they still crushed everybody else in the Premier League this season. That perhaps the way football is moving, England's wunderkinds are coming along at the perfect time and in the perfect position, because maybe we're phasing out of the central midfield era for a little while before they come back into vogue. You know, the Spanish team of 10 years ago, like, would that be as dominant today with the way football is played? Potentially not. Like, I know I'm trying to skew this in a way that favours the English team, but like they've had previous golden generations and all that, but I think there's just something about this crop where it's like, God, these guys are very, very good very, very quickly. Like, they're teenagers. These aren't anywhere near their peak just yet.
So who wins between Spain 2010 and Liverpool? Is it 2 legs or 1 leg? Is it a one-off game? So, I mean, that's the other kind of issue with Liverpool in the Champions League this year. Weren't as dominant, obviously. Now, maybe because they'd already won the Champions League and their complete focus was on the league. Who knows? If this was like a celebrity death match for, your right to survive on planet Earth, who wins in that game? I don't know.
Is it sacrilege to even suggest that? Like, I mean, we've got Graham Hunter up in 10 minutes. Like, we better not be having this conversation in front of him, because he will tell us off quite significantly for suggesting that Spanish team could be beaten by anybody. But like, I wonder if you actually
Barcelona would have beaten Spain because they've got Messi.
Well, true, exactly. But if you copy and paste that style of play into today's football, and that is on vogue, are Liverpool still dominant? They might be, Like, does evolution always mean that things get better, or does evolution simply mean that things are changing? So, I don't know.
Like, could Xavi and Iniesta kill Henderson and Fabinho and Naby Keita? Maybe they could.
Or is them killing Liverpool's midfield not as relevant as it was 10 years ago, potentially, is another way of looking at it. The Daily Telegraph this morning leads with cricket. England and West Indies to take the knee. Players agree on show of unity as Test cricket returns. Broad set to be axed as home side look to Archer and Wood. You've got a photograph there of Jamie Vardy celebrating his goal last night as well. You've got more on this story about the bullying claims in British gymnastics and how an inquiry is going to begin. Fernando Alonso eyes comeback, and he's set to return to Formula 1 with Renault in 2021. So that's the big news from that yesterday. And then paralysed jockey's hope. So this is British jump jockey Jacob Pritchard-Webb, who was paralysed from the waist down in a fall at Auteuil in France a fortnight ago. It's hopeful that he might be able to walk again. So it's a very, very sad story, but incredible if that is the case. So that is the Daily Telegraph.
The Racing Post, front and back covers for you. The Racing Post price-wise on the King George, and Eclipse Ace Guyot has York date next. And they also have the Anglo-Irish classifications reveal the best jumps horses in the business. We'll obviously talk about that on Friday Night Racing this week. And the back page is Put Faith in Pope, Young Star Can Shine in long-awaited first test. So everybody's hyping up the cricket in England at the moment.
Finally for me then, it is the Herald. Quinn out of League of Ireland picture. Crucial roles still open as FAI bids to rebuild. We've got a photograph there of Bukayo Saka celebrating with Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang as Arsenal went 1-0 up last night. Klopp in call for patience. Meanwhile, he's told Liverpool fans to be patient as they try and close in on the 100-point mark. And battle of club versus county goes on. GAA still to resolve oldest controversy. That is the Herald this morning.
The Irish News back page is Blues storm the Palace. A picture of Olivier Giroud looking very Olivier Giroud. It's like, look, I've just scored. He has in the 3-2 win last night. And then Donnelly can't wait to get back in the groove with more men. This is an interesting story. Niall Donnelly, who was ready to quit inter-county football at the age of 27 after a series of injuries, has found that the injuries have settled down. He's been able to get back training properly, and he's looking forward to going back playing inter-county at the age of just 27. I think it's probably going to be a lot of these stories where people find that their body has rested for a couple of months and suddenly they're back interested in it again. There was just one other thing that I wanted to talk about. There was a tweet earlier on from a surgeon, Professor Carl Moran, says, busy morning in theatre at the Santry Sports Clinic. Interestingly, we're already seeing ACL injuries come through with the return to sport. Will limited preparation time for injury prevention and load management result in a tsunami of sports injuries this season? This is a very good question. And I think it might actually be one of the reasons why, when a new calendar is drawn up, and I'm saying when as opposed to if, in the GAA, that there is a proper relationship between clubs and county, so that the club player, who is also an inter-county player, isn't doing a heavy session with the inter-county team midweek and then another one with the club. But actually there's a proper program in place. And it's relatively easy to do these days, given how many people have Fitbits and how it's easy enough to set communication up. All of these problems are solvable if people want to solve the problem. And
I think Michael Verney made a good point earlier on, is that this has shown that all like what you just said is very, very true. And like we've had so many conversations over the last couple of years about calendars getting squeezed and games getting squeezed into small spaces in the calendars. Like there was a need this year to squeeze the intercounty and the club season into a very compact space, and everybody managed to pile together and actually do it. It shows that the idea of stringing these things on for too long doesn't always need to be the case, and where there is a will, there is generally sort of a solution to it. So it's a good point. Like, I mean, not only a master fixtures plan is required, but a master training plan is required, and getting into the minutiae of the day-by-day life of club and county players. Right, we're going to be joined by Kenny Cunningham in just a moment. Just to tell you that OTB AM is live in association with Gillette every morning. Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters. So Kenny will be with us right after this.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Football is back.
Liverpool have got it front, and Sadio Mane scored.
Like the rest of us returning to work, the Premier League is also back. Keep up to date with the latest scores on the OTB Sports app. Live updates and analysis of this summer's Premier League action. The OTB Sports app. Live score updates straight to your phone.
Missing this? When that didn't materialise, I think both Paulie and myself probably looked at each other and kind of thought, what next?
Then get this, the all-new OTB Sports app. Off the Ball, Ireland's premier sports channel, now has a new home, featuring the biggest names in Irish and world sports. Podcasts, interviews, news, commentary, analysis, plus almost 20 years of sporting archives. All free and ready when you are, at home or on the go. The new OTB Sports app. Download it now from the App Store and Google Play.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
You're welcome back. It is 9:01. Kenny Cunningham is with us this Wednesday morning. Kenny, how are you?
Morning, lads. All good.
Let's start with the late game last night, because you were chatting to the lads already about the early games. Leicester against Arsenal. Pretty good game. We had Gary Breen on a Monday morning after the win against Wolves, and he was saying there's positive signs, but he has huge reservations about where Arsenal still are defensively. Things have got better though, haven't they? Even in the context of their defence last night, they looked a little less shambolic than they did 2 weeks ago.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So I think they've been better since Arteta came in, on in terms of from an organisational point of view. You can tell he's quite a diligent coach, and I think there's been a certain structure to what Arsenal have done since he's come into the football club. Hasn't always been hugely successful. Form has been a little bit up and down, but clearly there's been an improvement there in terms of the basic organisation of the team. Certainly from a defensive point of view, I think he is limited in terms of the players he has available to him, particularly across the defensive line. I'm sure Breeny would have alluded to that. But I'm reasonably impressed with what I'm seeing from him. I think there's grounds for optimism there, particularly in relation to a lot of the forward-thinking players in the Arsenal setup, the young players in particular, some great talent there. But it's going to be a slow burn. It's going to be a slow road back, I think, for the Arsenal faithful over the next couple of years. Just have to show a bit of patience.
How important is it then that Mikel Arteta is really trying to lay down a marker in terms of the culture at the club? Like, we've seen a story this week that Matteo Guendouzi has been training on his own for the last 2 weeks, ever since that Brighton spat, and perhaps the lack of professionalism he showed on that occasion and the lack of an apology forthcoming. Whether or not it's right or wrong to be that harsh on a young player like that, it is still Mikel Arteta showing that the culture is hugely important to the club, and that can only be a positive in the long term, even if Guendouzi has to eventually leave the club.
Yeah, it's difficult to know, Owen, an individual situation like that from the outside looking in. I'll be very surprised if he's taken that stance, Arteta, and ostracising from the group for a 2-week period, just off the back of that one incident at Brighton. If there was a combination of those things, maybe there was a question mark about his attitude of the player, how he's carrying himself around the training ground, how he's applying himself in training on a day-to-day basis. Mate, that's obviously a little bit different. Gives the whole thing a little bit more context. I think in that situation, you have to be seen to be taking a stance. I think the other players are looking to the manager saying, well, look, are you going to let this happen? You know, is he going to get away with this? So at some stage, you have to put your foot down. But generally speaking, I'm a fan of the young kid. He is a young kid. You have to remember that he's still developing, still growing as a person and as a player as well. And my gut reaction would be to stick with him. I think any young player, I hate to see any young player leave a leave a football club kind of cast aside to a certain extent. I think all the best coaches, managers kind of put the work in with a player and try to turn him around in the kind of short to medium term. So I hope it isn't the end of his Arsenal career, because I think he's got real talent, the lad. And I think they could do with him that kind of bit of energy that he brings, bit of bite to that central midfield area. It's been an issue for Arsenal for quite some time, but he may have his reasons, Arteta. But he needs to get it right, because you can get that kind of call wrong on sometimes. If you're seen to be kind of coming down hard on a young player, and the player actually has a sympathy of the majority of the players in the dressing room, that can be different. That can be counterproductive. That can go against you as a manager. If the perception amongst the players are, well, yeah, okay, he stepped out of line, but really, Gaffer, that's a little bit too much. So that can kind of go against you. That can turn a number of the players against you as a manager. So you have to be careful. Every individual situation is different. But he's a new manager, Arteta. I understand the point that you're making in terms of trying to put a stamp as authority at the football club. But you always have to be aware. I think any decision you make as a manager, the effect that has, how it's perceived by the whole group, not just that one individual.
Sure, Kenny, let's assume that this isn't just because of the incident, and that you're right, there's something deeper going on, and he's trying to teach him a lesson. When you're in a situation like Arteta is in, there's a short window where you get to establish what that culture is going to be. You can see Guendouzi thriving at one of the super clubs that he's being linked with, where, for example, he's not thrust into the team straight away, and he's not being asked to be a leader. Or in the dressing room, for example, in 3 seasons' time, when Arteta has laid down exactly what the rules are, and everybody knows this is his team and he's the boss, and everybody has to do what he has to say. But very early on in your managerial career, if there's any kind of distraction from a young player, he might be good enough to be in your team, but he might also not be the right character for this squad when you're just building what that culture is supposed to be.
Yeah, I'm never quite sure, Jared, the word culture, you know what I mean? It's one of those kind of buzzwords, I suppose. I'm never quite sure exactly what it means. It means different things to different people, I think. But I'd like to think of, in the modern game, you get the impression, a lot of the kind of dressing rooms, a little bit maybe sterile, kind of lack of personality. And I think that's kind of to the detriment of the dressing room, in all honesty. I think as a manager, you can be a strong manager. You can rule. You can manage with authority, but you can also create an environment where you encourage, a kind of an environment at the football club where, players feel comfortable to express an opinion and show a bit of personality around the place. It's not kind of computer-like in terms you come into the training ground, do your work on the training pitch, get your work done in the gym, physical conditioning. It's kind of a robotic existence at the football club. Nobody questions the manager. You do, you're told, this is the culture. We want to improve. We want to get better. You're professionals. That type of thing. I mean, there's a certain level of that where you think, yeah, that's to be applauded. But for me personally, I always enjoyed a dressing room where, yeah, you had a certain type of work ethic, but the manager allowed players a little bit of license in terms of how they kind of reacted to other people, the kind of relationship they had, the kind of personalities they had. At times, maybe they stepped over the line on occasion. But I think that type of vibrant kind of dressing room was a dressing room which I kind of enjoyed. We always hear about lack of personalities in the dressing rooms these days. Probably no surprise when you're constantly hearing about a certain culture. Managers want to impose a certain culture of a football club and a work ethic and those type of things. At times I get a sense of managers don't strike the right balance between those two things. And the best dressing rooms for me have both of those things. A kind of fierce work ethic amongst the players who want to win, want to be competitive, want to achieve things. But also you have those real kind of, outlandish personalities, strong personalities in the dressing room who will voice an opinion, who kind of will fall out on occasion with themselves and with other people. So not really so much a right or wrong for me on that question.
Right, that's interesting. Is that something that perhaps existed in the Liverpool dressing room over the last couple of years? The idea of a kind of a very hard-working culture, but at the same time there is sort of a lightheartedness to things. I accept that can always seem the way when a team is winning, and perhaps the greatest judge of a team is when they're actually got their back up and they're trying to get back up the table.
Yeah, I think so. I think you're right. Certainly there's strong personalities in that Liverpool dressing room, and you'd imagine there's players there who would be willing to voice an opinion on occasion in the dressing room, on the training pitch, or around the football club. I get the sense that's a very vocal dressing room at Liverpool. Not too many quiet voices around the place. you know, people voicing opinion, and not just about going around falling out with people and having arguments all the time. It's just having strong personalities there, like vocal people who want to have a conversation, and who were kind of, you know, really kind of energized the kind of the dressing room. And there's a kind of bit of a fun element to that as well. I mean, you don't want to go into work every single day. It can't be too serious, your work environment as well. And probably similar for yourselves. You go into work every day. Yes, you want to work. You've got to be professional how you approach things. But at the end of the day, you know, you want to be able to just chill out a little bit as well, and you know, share a conversation with somebody you like, you know, laugh with somebody, that type of thing as well. So it's all about the right type of environment at a football club. It's slightly different from club to club, but for me, it's kind of a happy mix of all of those things, which is a kind of an ideal environment that you're looking for. So I'm hoping that's what Arteta's looking to do at Arsenal, but I sometimes get a sense in the modern game that with some managers, young managers as well, you know, it's all about the process, you know, it's all about the project, the culture around the football club. And I always question sometimes exactly what that means.
We did want to get your take on Liverpool and what they might do in the off-season, Kenny. We're going to have a look at their depth chart. Go for it. What did he say?
Nothing.
Nothing. So thanks a million for your time this morning, Kenny. So the depth chart at Liverpool. So perhaps if we wanted to split hairs, we might have to get you splitting hairs a small bit this morning. What would Liverpool have to do in the off-season? Like, it's a situation here where the team close to picks itself, the first 11. So we're going to be looking at who's option 2 quite a bit here today. We'll just start very briefly. In goals, Adrian is obviously the nailed-on starter there. He's got another 4 years on his contract. The question is, what happens if Adrian gets injured again, or if Alisson gets injured again, I should say. Sorry. Adrian is the backup. That is the question we're asking here. Do they need a new backup goalkeeper? He's got 1 year left on his deal, Adrian. He's not at Alisson's level, clearly. Is he the required level to even be a backup at Liverpool at the moment?
No, I think that's a fair question, Alan, because I don't think there's too many positions, even in the squad, let alone the starting 11, where you can really argue that Liverpool are at a disadvantage or there's any kind of slight weakness. I think probably the goalkeeping position, the number 2, as you suggested, is probably that one. You've always got to think, manager, that kind of worst case scenario. You can't think Alisson's going to be fit, presume he's going to be fit for the whole of next season or the season after that. So you have to make contingency plans where if he's out for a significant period of time, I know he missed about a month, was it a month, 6 weeks, or start to kind of last season. It wasn't a huge amount of time, particularly in terms of game time. So you have to make allowances for that, and you have to look at Adrian. I'm not sure, to be honest with you. I think potentially they could strengthen in that area of the pitch, but it's easier said than done. Easy to say, I just go and get a better goalkeeper in, but there's all the top goalkeepers want to play. It's as simple as that. No top goalkeeper is going to come in and sign for Liverpool as a number 2 and play second fiddle to Alisson and play a small quota of games during the course of the year. So you've got to accept that the keeper who comes in as a number 2 to Alisson, there's going to be a certain drop-off in terms of ability. It has to be, because otherwise he's not going to come into the football club and accept second billing. Can you get a keeper of better quality than Adrian? Possibly so. There might be keepers out there. You've got to throw a lot of money at them, obviously, to keep them happy. They're happy to keep the bench warm for the majority of the season. So it's going to take a big lump in terms of possibly transfer fee and certainly wages to keep them sweet, keep them happy. But I'd agree with you. I think potentially out there's a goalkeeper of a better quality than Adrian, who if they needed to lean on for a significant portion next season, that could be pivotal in terms of the league title next season. So yeah, I would agree with you. Probably the only area for me, the Liverpool team, that we could probably have that kind of discussion in terms of maybe strengthening in that area of the pitch.
If we move on to centre-backs, Kenny, consensus has emerged throughout the season that Joe Gomez is the partner for Virgil van Dijk. They are the starting centre-halves for Liverpool. You drop down to Lovren and Matip as your backups at this stage, and it is not like a drop-off to Adrian at this point. Matip has proven himself to be a consistent performer himself. Does that mean you don't need to sign? Does that mean Lovren and Matip playing behind Joe Gomez and Virgil van Dijk in your depth chart is where Liverpool can stay, and staying static in that position is fine this summer?
Yeah, I think so. As long as those 2 players are happy to do that, that's always the key. They're very experienced players, those 2 players, and I'd actually be a little bit surprised if both of those players were happy to turn up at Liverpool next season, knowing that Gomez and Van Dijk are Klopp's first pair. It's different if you're a young pro starting off, 19, 21 years of age, around the squad, and you're looking at Gomez, Van Dijk, you're still learning, you're still developing, think, well, I'll accept this for another 2-3 years. This is a great environment to be in. I'm only going to get better knowing that you've got 10, 12 years ahead of you still. That's not the case with Matip, and certainly not Lovren. So wouldn't surprise me again, as successful as Liverpool have been, potentially one of those players, maybe even Lovren. You'd like to think possibly Matip just ahead of Lovren in the pecking order at the moment, Owen. So it wouldn't surprise me, in my experience, Lovren must have knocked on Klopp's door in the summer, in the off-season, say, look, I've really enjoyed it here. It's been absolutely amazing, fantastic experience. But at my age, I just want to play now. I've got a couple of years left at a reasonably high level. I just want to play football. It's not going to happen for me here. Let's be realistic. We're not going to fall out over it. Just let me take a reasonable fee from me and let me go. So that'd be the only occasion, Owen, I suggested if Liverpool needs to go maybe and reinforce in terms of backup at centre-half. But certainly if Lovren and Matip are happy to stay and play and be a part of the squad, yeah, absolutely no need to strengthen in that area for me.
It's interesting then when you look at the full-backs, because if you've got consensus in the centre-backs, there's absolutely no question when it comes to the full-backs that Andy Robertson and Trent Alexander-Arnold are your two there for the foreseeable future. You've got the likes of Nico Williams and Hoover as your backups to Trent Alexander-Arnold. They don't really have any backup to Andy Robertson on the left. Could this ever become an issue? I'm clutching at straws here, but could this ever become an issue where players have such a stranglehold on the jersey where even just an inkling of complacency might come in? Because nobody, as I say, comes close to taking the jersey off these two guys at the moment at Liverpool.
No, you're right. And that's where Klopp's got to come into the equation in terms of knowing your players. The good managers, they understand their players, the mentality of their players, what drives them, can they trust them? If there's not that kind of competition for their place, is there going to be a drop-off? That complacency is going to set in. That's all about understanding your players as a manager, having your finger on the pulse. And if Klopp is assured that in Trent Alexander and Robertson, he doesn't have to worry about that. Oh, and they're so focused, so driven, doesn't matter if they're being pushed or not, the level of performance is going to be the same. Then he doesn't really have to worry about that. He's got some good options. I've really liked the lad Nico Williams. Every time I've seen him play, he's really impressed me. Certainly one for the future. I'd have no problems him coming in for an extended period in the team. The left back's more an interesting one. Again, you could make an argument there on in terms of spending money, spending 10 million on literally just a backup left back. And, paying him a wage. But I think actually within the squad, with the likes of James Milner and even Gomez, you remember Gomez came into the Liverpool team originally. He came in and actually played left back. So you can make an argument for Gomez's versatility across the back four at centre-half, right back and left back is actually sufficient with the likes of James Milner and Nico Williams to actually cover any kind of potential problems which they might have across that defensive line without actually going out and spending.
There was a period when Spurs where essentially they had four fullbacks and they kind of interchanged, and Pochettino did it so that everybody could play super high intensity week in, week out. Is there any point where they just go, Robertson and Trent Alexander-Arnold are so important to the width of the team and the how we actually pin teams back and how we create space, that we want them to be able to go full bore for 60% of the games, and actually we rest them for 40% of the games, so that it's elongating their career and making sure that they are able to go high intensity. So that it's not just about picking your best team all the time. You're literally giving them rest periods during the season.
Yeah, absolutely, Ger. And again, that comes back to the manager and the support staff, the physical conditioning people, knowing all your players. They'll have the computer data on all those players in terms of their physiology. They should know exactly what they're capable of. And every player is different in terms, even his physical, mental makeup. Ger, every player is different. Other players, you're absolutely right. You could make that argument. Look, we can only get 60% of the games out of this fella full pelt. We've got to be careful. We've got to rotate. We've got to take him out, put him back in. We've got to be really careful with Rappham and Cotton Mull. Other players, and not so much. I mean, the volume of games those two players, Robertson and Trent Alexander, have played has been absolutely phenomenal. But you're right, Jerry, in terms of the medium to long term, you've got to be looking at, they're going to be a detrimental effect maybe to that further down the line. I think there's an argument for kind of taking a minute in and out of the team as of when. The amount of cup competitions that Liverpool play and maybe targeting certain Premier League games in terms of taking them out. But you're right when you say, Jared, in terms of their importance to the team, those two fullbacks is quite unique in terms of how Liverpool play, how advanced they get those fullbacks high up the pitch, and how dependent they are in terms of their delivery into the box for goal scoring, to create goal scoring opportunities for other people. You really know other two fullbacks. You can argue, well, bring another two fullbacks and play 50-50 the games. I can't think of another two fullbacks who would have the kind of impact on that Liverpool team in terms of goals scored and certainly goals, chances created than those two fullbacks. So, yeah, I think it's a fair argument, but at the moment, I'd hang my hat on those two players. But I'd keep an eye on it. Even Robertson's performances of late, the Robertson performance at Manchester City was interesting just because we were just not used to seeing that kind of below-par performance from a Liverpool fullback. Some of Robertson's decision-making in those games, getting dragged into areas he shouldn't have gone, getting done in 1-2s and costing his team a couple of goals. Even small things like that, you wonder, maybe just a little bit of physical fatigue maybe creeping into Robertson's game there. So even that, I'm sure the Liverpool staff would be assessing that, thinking, do you know what, maybe we just have to look after him. Maybe a little bit more than Alexander Arnold. He's a little bit different type of a beast. Maybe we've got to, next season, maybe we've got to protect him a little bit more, Robertson, in certain games, at certain moments during the season. But like I said, I think the answer's already within the squad. I suppose that's what I'm saying, with the likes of Milner, Gomez's versatility, Nico Williams, etc. I really feel the answer's already there within the squad.
Let's move on to the midfield. So it's an interesting one that this has been the area where most of the talk has surrounded Liverpool in terms of going into the transfer market. Thiago Alcantara has been linked to the club. So you probably have your first choice three, Kenny, I presume, as Fabinho, Wijnaldum and Henderson. But at the same time, you do have a couple of potential bolters next season who have bolted in the past in Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain and Naby Keita. Like, I think there's probably still more to come from those two players, and there's a good chance that more will come. Do they need to dip their foot into the water here? Do they need to go and get somebody like Alcantara to actually come to the club to ensure that the standards don't drop in midfield? Wijnaldum now has got 1 year left in his contract, by the way, so that could become an issue down the line.
No, well, I don't see the Thiago one at all, to be honest with you. He's a fine player. He's a wonderful footballer, but the way Liverpool play and how they operate, I don't see how he fits into that Liverpool team whatsoever. You could argue he could operate at the base of the midfield three, Thiago, in terms of being that kind of quarterback, but he can't defend. He can't go into the Liverpool team and that hold the midfield position, not being able to defend. He's not really a number 8, Thiago, either, in terms of playing that advanced role hard up the pitch. So that's a no-go for me. I mean, the argument's redundant. They don't need it. They've got the option of Henderson and Fabinho in that holding midfield position. They can dovetail those two in that area of the pitch. Henderson has the versatility actually playing that higher position, that number 8 role, hard up the pitch alongside Wijnaldum, you're right. And then they got the options of Keita and Oxlade-Chamberlain as well. Curtis Jones as well is going to be an option in that area of the pitch going forward as well. James Milner at a push can come in there. So again, as long as the attitude of the players is spot on, as long as Keita and Oxlade-Chamberlain are happy to get their heads down, work hard and and look to push for more game time. Again, I could see, in my own experience, you could see a situation, maybe Keita could knock on the, talk about Lover knocking on the managers, or maybe Keita could knock on the managers during the summer and say, look, you know what, this has been great, absolutely amazing, but I can't see myself getting the team here. It's so strong, the centre midfield area. I don't want to be playing 15, 20 games a season for the next 2 seasons. I'm in my prime here. I want to go and play again. So again, for me, that's the only situation where I'd envisage Klopp having to spend big in that area of the pitch. A lot of talk about Liverpool, how functional they are in that area of the pitch. Maybe not as creative. The kind of technical levels aren't on a par with Manchester City, and that's probably a fair point to be made in that respect. But it's all how the team actually functions, how they set up to play. So those type of players blend perfectly well in terms of how the Liverpool machine operates. So again, in terms of personnel, lads, I think it's absolutely perfect. I don't see the reason where you need to bring a player. There's plenty of options there for me. Curtis Jones as well could be one who really comes on strong at the start of the next season. So there's another option for the manager in that area of the pitch. So again, I just don't feel as if he needs to tweak too much in that area of the pitch. For me, again, is the answer. As long as the attitude of the players is spot on and Klopp gets a sense of the players, the focus is still there, that determination, that kind of ambition to go and win back-to-back titles and win more trophies and be the best and create a dynasty. As long as he gets a sense of that around the place, for me, there's almost no argument for in terms of really strengthening that squad considerably.
Could you explain to us why exactly Thiago is a different sort of midfielder and why it will be a square peg in a round hole?
Well, for me, maybe this is more of a personal thing. Liverpool play with like that kind of V-shaped midfield. They play with a holding midfield at number 6 and 2 number 8, pretty much the same as a Manchester City. Now, we've kind of had the argument about Henderson and Fabinho last season, and it is an interesting argument. I think it's not so much for me one player is better than the other. One player has different attributes to the other player. For me, Jordan Henderson is a better holding midfield, has better defensive attributes than Fabinho. Fabinho's probably had a better all-rounded game, a better passer of the ball than Jordan Henderson. But I think they can both play in that area of the pitch. For me, Fabinho has enough defensive qualities to operate in that area of the pitch. Not as strong as I would like, and not as strong as Henderson's, but still very effective in that area of the pitch. Henderson can do that role as well. When I look at Thiago, I've seen a lot of Thiago play. He's a brilliant technical player. Reminds me a little bit maybe Jorginho. And I'd have the same argument with Jorginho at Chelsea. For me, there's no future for Jorginho at Chelsea. If Chelsea want to win a league title, they can't win a league title where Jorginho playing that holding midfield for Chelsea. And Thiago's a similar player. Brilliant in terms of receiving the ball from the defensive line, getting on the half turn, and working the ball up the pitch, breaking the lines with his pass, and technically lovely array of pass, and ticks all those boxes in possession of the football when he's got the ball at his feet. But out possession, I mean, he's not an athlete. He's not the most dynamic. Has got that defensive mindset in terms of sensing danger, cutting off channels, physically imposing himself, winning tackles, dropping into space, covering people, all of those things. And I think whatever league you play in, those type of attributes are important. For me, even more so in the Premier League. I think that type of holding midfielder with that kind of defensive mindset is absolutely paramount if you're going to be successful and go and win titles. Man City have had it with Fernandinho when they won their league titles. You even look at the Leicester team, the likes of Kante and Drinkwater. You know, those type of players, Henderson as well. Fabinho has enough of that for me, just in terms of positional senses, and has enough to get by in terms of what's around them as well, in terms of the work ethic around them. So that's why Thiago, for me, is wonderful a footballer as he is. I don't see that fit at all, personally, him coming to Liverpool. If there was a centre midfield player, if you were to ask me if there's a player out there who could really elevate Liverpool wouldn't have to necessarily change how they play to accommodate him, it would be Kai Havertz, Leverkusen. For me, he's the one. I think if Klopp's going to spend big potentially over the next year or so, he's the type of player for me. I would sacrifice Naby Keita in midfield. I would sell Naby Keita now for 30, 40 million and go and spend 80 million to get this fella in, because this fella for me is almost a complete player. Has that physical presence, 6'2", 6'3", good athlete, good, decent work ethic, but a high level of technical ability. Brilliant left-footed player, beautiful to watch, and a good box-to-box player. Engine gets into the box. Good header of the ball, arrives late, can actually win a header and score goals. So that type of player, I think that's down the road. I don't think that'll happen now, but potentially if you were saying the next year or two, when's that next big money signing for Liverpool, that kind of elite player, where is he going to come in? For me, if you had to offer me a player now, it would be him. It would be Havertz or Bayern Leverkusen in terms of really elevating that Liverpool squad. But again, for me, he's not a necessity at this moment in time. Probably won't be able to get him out of Leverkusen anyway.
Is it correct to say, Kenny, that the current piece in the jigsaw that they already have that would be most similar to him is Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain? Like, is it kind of an ability to play on the wing, but obviously Liverpool don't necessarily need that quality all the time, considering how set their right winger position is, that it's almost an attacking midfielder who has midfielder sensibilities?
Yeah, it's a good point about Oxlade-Chamberlain, that kind of versatility. You're seeing that in the modern game now, Owen, in terms of players who can operate in different positions, not only across the front line, but also one of those central midfield areas. Not too many of them around, people who can play in a midfield three, Owen, and also operate across to the front line as well. Oxlade-Chamberlain is one of those, can play in that advanced midfield area, can operate off the flanks as well. Havertz has got that kind of versatility as well, believe it or not. Yeah, so you're right. I think that's one of Liverpool's strengths as well, that kind of versatility in terms of Oxlade-Chamberlain can go into the front line as well. And if you want to take it onto the Liverpool front line, you got the likes of Origi, Minamino. Minamino is a different type of player. Looks more like a number 10 for me. Not really ideally suited to one of those central midfield positions, or actually one of the wide positions, the way Liverpool play. Always wants to come on the inside really and play in the pocket. So he's a different type of beast to what they've already had, but still a good option to have off the bench. So for me, Liverpool still got those good options in Origi, Minamino, Oxlade-Chamberlain. If you want to take out one of those front three, or you lose them for a period of time, and you still have decent options there in terms of players to bring into the squad. The young lad Harvey Ellis just signed a new contract as well. He could be one who could really bloom over the next 6 to 12 months. So if Klopp has confidence in those younger players coming through, no need for him to go and put his money in his wallet and go and spend the kind of money he needs to strengthen around the periphery of the squad. Again, for me, the answer could already be there in terms of the qualities of those younger players who are pushing to come through.
It's looking like, if you're looking at Kai Havertz price tags, it's looking between 80 to 105, 110 million pounds. Like, I mean, Chelsea have been linked with them as well. Whether or not they'll do a Werner Havertz double this window probably looks doubtful. So they might get away with waiting until next year. Hopefully a few more pounds are back in the coffers and they might be able to make a move for him then. He's contracted to Leverkusen until 2022. So you heard it here first, Havertz to Liverpool, although he has actually been linked with the club previously. Front three, Kenny, I presume this is going to be the quickest one of all. The front three picks themselves. The drop off to Minamino then, if you want to use him as the next best option across the front three, is that too significant to drop off in your view?
No, I don't think so. I think I wouldn't talk down Origi too much. Origi's probably the one for me best suited to operate in any of those front three positions. He can play down the middle or off the flank. Seems to have a good attitude, the lad, in terms of, spends a lot of time on the bench, but again shows the right attitude when he comes on the pitch. And that's important because if you're a forward player at Liverpool, your name's not Mo Salah, Firmino or Mane, you're just not going to play. You're literally not going to play. And it's not an argument. You can't even see those players being rotated. When those three players are fit, they play. It's as simple as that. And that's one of the reasons probably why they're not. They haven't been looking for a move. You never hear stories coming out that Liverpool Football Club, one of those front three aren't happy, keep getting substitute and not getting enough game time. If Liverpool are going to keep those players over the next 2 to 3 years and keep them out of the hands of the likes of whatever, Barcelona, Real Madrid, that's not to say like necessarily those clubs are in a better place than Liverpool, but it's like certain players, the draw of kind of Barcelona and Real Madrid is always a big one for some players, not necessarily about money, etc. So to keep those players focused and happy, they've got to play. Those three have got to play every single time that they're fit. So every player knows that coming in. I'm amazed Timo Werner even would have considered getting on the flight and going to Liverpool to talk to Jurgen Klopp. Because the first question he asked Jurgen Klopp and his agent surely would have been, where do you see me playing in this team? And Jurgen Klopp would have said, well, I don't. You don't play. You don't play in this team with that front three fit. Now, what player of any quality, any stand in the game is going to sign for Liverpool, the greatest football team as they are, knowing that you're not going to play? You're just going to have to wait for a fair share of the games. It's as simple as that. Every player... Is
there no room for somebody to take Firmino's place? Firmino is obviously an excellent player, but seems a little bit low on confidence at the moment.
Oh, no. I wouldn't look over a game or two, and certainly not at the moment, Jared, in terms of where Liverpool are, league being won and focus being a little bit. For me, I'd make an argument Firmino's become even more key to that Liverpool team over the past 12 months. The type of player he is, how he operates, Jared, how he drops off, links things up, opens those spaces for the other two to run in behind. He's the perfect foil for kind of Mane and Salah, how they want to play. They want to run in behind all the time, run into those spaces. That's where they want to operate. And Firmino's game complements that. He understands that. So he's prepared to drop off, drag centre-halves under the ball, open those spaces up. And it's not just that. He's prepared to drop off. Technically, he's excellent as well, playing on the half-turn, his link-up play. And he's actually, for me, Jay, is actually finishing. I've been most impressed with his finishing to the extent where before the lockdown, I was looking at him, remember the World Club final before Christmas, and I was thinking to myself, you know what, if a chance fell to Liverpool forward at the moment in terms of, they needed to go, whether it was for the Champions League or whatever, Firmino's probably the one. For me, the one is the player who shows real composure in front of goal inside the penalty box, and has been this season. That scenario of the game has actually improved. He wasn't seen as a prolific goal scorer when he first came to the football club, but he's the one, just as much as the other two lads, if a chance fell in front of the box, he's the one showing the composure, having the extra touch, lifting the ball over the goalkeeper. His finishing is as good as the other two. So I'd actually argue the opposite. I'd argue Firmino has actually become more important in terms of how Liverpool, that front three, functions over the past year or so. Yeah. So they're pretty much untouchable. The only reason, again, you'll see Liverpool spend 100 million on the top class forward-thinking player, whether it's Sancho or somebody else, it'll have to be one out and one in. One of those players will have to go to accommodate one of these higher profile, top heavy signings to come into the football club. It's as simple as that. In the meantime, you just supplement those players as best you can. And again, for me, the answer is within the squad in the shape of Origi, Minamino, Oxlade-Chamberlain, and even young Harvey. And I'm pleased for him because it means more opportunity for those young players to kind of develop and bloom within the football club.
And Rhian Brewster coming back on loan, from loan as well, is another one. And just a final point then, before we wrap. This morning, actually, Christian Falk, the journalist with Bild, who's on top of a lot of transfer news, has actually tweeted that Kai Havertz will ask his club, Bayer Leverkusen, to sell him this summer, and he's included at Chelsea in the tweet. You do wonder if perhaps Liverpool's hand might be forced because Chelsea have already gazumped them on one big transfer this summer. Could Liverpool make a special dispensation to splash the cash on Kai Havertz? So that'll be one to watch over the next couple of weeks. Kenny, great stuff. So one change for Liverpool. The depth chart only needs one addition, really. We'll do it again same time next year where perhaps more additions need to be done. Kenny, cheers.
Cheers, lads.
Kenny Cunningham there on the line. Right. This Friday at 1 o'clock, we'll be giving you another chance to win €1,000 in our new game show, Know Your Football. The prize fund has been reset after one of our contestants answered all 15 questions last week and walked away with €1,000. You can register at the following link, quiz.otbsports.com. That is quiz.otbsports.com. Then simply log in before 1 o'clock on Friday to play along. Know Your Football is brought to you in association with Paddy Power. Check out paddypower.com for their great offers and always gamble responsibly. Just to tell you, in the Premier League tonight at 6 o'clock, it is West Ham against Burnley, Manchester City against Newcastle, and Sheffield United against Wolves. And then at 8:15, Liverpool are in action. They are away to Brighton. So, Jared, that was Kenny Cunningham making the point that Kai Havertz would be a good one to look at down the line. Does this news this morning that he's going to ask for a move kind of force their hand a small bit? Because Chelsea, if they've got the cash and they certainly have some of it to spend on Werner already this summer, they might swoop in and take him. And there may be no more talk about Kai Havertz from a Liverpool perspective.
The club doesn't seem like somebody who gets his hand forced. Firmino is obviously a brilliant striker, and I get the point that Kenny was saying there, but 8 goals in the Premier League, is there no room for a striker in that number 9 situation who can create that space but also scores 15 to 20 goals a season? Is there not room for somebody like that in the team? And it's not Origi. Don't tell me it's Origi.
Yeah, it's true. I don't know. The conversation is going to continue over the next little while. I think the bottom line here is that, you know, Liverpool are in pretty good shape. It's just that the next rung down, where do they potentially go? Right, it is 9:36 on this Wednesday morning. Graham Hunter is here. How are you, Graham?
I'm grand, thanks. Are you?
I'm okay. Let's talk first off about Lionel Messi. It's kind of a conversation we've been having for quite some time this year, but it sort of feels that the news is getting more and more real. So just this question for you. of all the times you've seen these Lionel Messi... Of all these Lionel Messi stories you've seen over the last few years, where does this particular one rank in terms of legitimacy? It definitely feels up there in terms of the most legitimate links.
That's a beautiful intro. Right? We'll try and make this real, okay? And not like all the previous conversations on. Look, it's much simpler than that. You want me to go on the Messiometer?
Yes.
We don't need all sort of gadgets and swings. And he was 33 the other week. His contract allowed him to walk away free at the end of this season, even though he's got one more year of contract. It was written in this get-out clause. As long as he notified them by the end of May, he didn't do that. Immediately, that didn't happen. The club naturally, because as poor a president as Bartomeu has been, he doesn't want to leave in 1 year's time because his mandate is also up. It's interesting how his contract runs out in a year's time. Now, he is mandated that he must resign in a year. They must call elections. That's obligatory. He doesn't want to be the president who is branded as the one that let Messi go. So if Messi doesn't renew, then by next summer, not only will there be a free-for-all, it'll be a blemish on Bartomeu's record for all time. So immediately, May finished and the pandemic allowed Barcelona to come back and train and play and plan and work together again. They started to try to talk to him about a new contract. And Messi's people said, no, we're not interested. Stop. Go away. Forget it. They didn't say, we're leaving. They said, we're not interested in talking right now. And immediately that leaked out. To be fair, when it leaked out on the Crossbar show on radio, where they, despite often being on between 11 p.m. and 1 a.m., they still get 1 million listeners. It was reported as, at the moment, Messi doesn't want to think about staying. At the moment, Messi... And the clarity that needs to be brought into that is that he should be looking around at 33 on at his options. He should, rather than be thinking about whether he can up his gross annual income from 100 million to 120 million. He's got two, I keep saying two when I talk about this, but at 33, he can still look utterly brilliant. He will become, at the end of this campaign, he'll be Barcelona's most important player. He'll probably be La Liga's best player. The weekend's exploits mean that he now has his fingerprints on, I think, 52 goals between those he scored and assists this season alone. A season in which he's lost a lot of time to injury. He's turned 33. He's in a deeply declining team. And he's deeply dissatisfied with what he sees around him. This will go down as a statistical mark to equal some of his other marks of pure genius that we've seen. So that's the situation. There's no need for speculation or is he definitely leaving? We're in a moment where currently ranked the world's best player, given that he's the Ballon d'Or holder, and still extraordinary at 33. He's looking around, and I say, why wouldn't he? You know that. You don't need to be reporting on La Liga rather than based in Dublin to see the logic of him going, I'm going to check my options because I'm not going to throw away 2 more good years when I could be winning trophies, when I could be doing special things if this squad isn't going to be better, if this club's not going to be better run.
There was a report in Argentina over the course of the weekend that Manchester United could make an offer of up to £120 million plus 2 players. You had Pep Guardiola asked about it and he says he hopes he stays in Barcelona. You had a situation now where, as you say, he's going to go into his last year of his contract, which doesn't suit Barcelona either. So all these things are kind of coming to a head at the moment. Like, is there a club in world football at the moment who could A, interest Lionel Messi and B, afford to bring him to the club? Like, I mean, interestingly, Lionel Messi probably comes with Champions League football. Manchester City might not have that to offer him. Outside of them, can you realistically see him going to Paris Saint-Germain? Maybe not, and that does leave Manchester United and that link from the report in Argentina over the course of the weekend as one of the viable options, which kind of seems incredible given where they were a few months ago.
It sounds utter tosh to me. I mean, I haven't read it, and therefore I should be journalistically more respectful to another organisation. But, Owen, if you put the magnifying glass on it, as you yourself were doing, what was the deal? You said 100 and what?
£120 million plus 2 players.
£120 million plus 2 players for a guy that's 33 and out of contract at the end of the season. Why wouldn't you wait a season and take him for free? Why wouldn't you start the contacts now? Why would you pay all that money? I don't understand it. I think there's a good argument that Leo Messi sitting right now, sitting in Barcelona, I don't want to renew because I'm not sure. I need time. Instead of trying to buy him, go to him and say, okay, in 12 months, we will take you. We will make your life heaven. We will be in a position to win the Champions League then, and we'll be able to show you a vastly improved squad, and you don't spend 100 and something million and nick out 2 players. I don't know. I can't see how that report, it doesn't make sense to me at all. It doesn't make sense to me at all. Manchester United is a venue for him. Maybe the club that has tried hardest to get him over now his entire career is Manchester City. It wasn't the case. Inter tried, Real Madrid tried when he was a youngster. Inter tried really, really hard. But Manchester City's owners, long before Pep was in charge, 2-3 coaches before Pep was in charge, were desperate to get Messi and put unbelievable financial incentives there for him and still covet him. And I understand why owners would covet him. The ruling about Manchester City's participation in the Champions League patently is very important. And I'm not convinced at all that taking what Pep Guardiola said about Messi, I hope he stays and completes his career at Barcelona. Take that aside. I'm not entirely sure what Pep Guardiola's view would be if you said, as owners, Pep, we're going to give you Messi. Outright rejection of it? No, but his plan of football is much more dynamic. Messi is a different kind of footballer. Genius though he is, he's a different kind of footballer than Pep inherited in 2008-9, different kind of footballer than when Pep left. It would mean a reorientation of how Manchester City play up front when they press, who does and doesn't track back. It would be a really big jump. And to be honest with you, if you said to me that during this season Messi doesn't renew his contract and Pep sees out his 1 year and it's a 1 year ban in the Champions League and Pep decides to move on because in due course he'll want to coach Brazil, in my opinion, and there's a new coach at Manchester City, Messi's out of contract and just turning 34, and Manchester City are back in the Champions League. If you said to me, is that a possible change? Possible? And Barcelona are still in a chaotic state? I'd say possible. But my opinion is that Messi will want to wait and see how the likely presidential winner, Victor Font, is shaping up during this year. He's going to wait and see what, if anything, Barcelona do in coaching terms this year. Does City stay or not? And Messi has got a bigger word now in how the team shape is. The weekend proved that. Messi asked City for specific tactical changes. They were granted. Griezmann moved in the centre, played next to Suarez, Messi in behind. Jordi Alba got freedom down the left. They played as if it was 2015. It's one of the most remarkable switchbacks from playing horribly to playing convincingly that I've seen. And therefore, we're in a state of flux on, if you want to talk about other clubs and where Messi might or might not go, that's fine as a hypothesis. But what's happening here is that Messi is surveying what he's got, surveying what else there is, and taking time to make a decision. And I think that's wise. I would say it'd be crazy to say, I'm just staying. The kids are happy, the family's happy, the lifestyle here is good. I owe Barcelona. I'm definitely staying for the last 2 brilliant years of my career. That would be naive, and he's not naive.
It's very interesting that he's had such a hand in the tactical shift, isn't it? Because I was going to ask you about the possibility that the new president of Barcelona, the power brokers, grant Messi his wish with a manager, whoever he wants to come in and manage the club. Xavi is who I'm thinking. Bring him back to Barcelona, give him to Messi as his manager. But the way you're talking now, it seems that perhaps Messi may have influence even with Setien.
You put me on dangerous ground there. If I'm completely honest, Xavi is such a shrewd beast that I think there's how can I put this carefully? A lot of received wisdom that Xavi's ideal stage of taking over is something akin to what Guardiola got in 2008, where some of the big beasts are no longer in your way. Now, Guardiola had to push out Ronaldinho and Deco. Situation with Messi is not the same. But my impression is that Xavi would really like a time machine so that he could start with 25-year-old Messi. But if he isn't granted that, then perhaps, how can I say it carefully and euphemistically, clear ground to make his own decisions about the style of play. Does that get the message across?
Just about, Graham.
And therefore, Messi is a new era, yeah, with space to make decisions that are fully his own. And look, Messi, let's not create a myth. I didn't mean to start the myth that Messi snaps his fingers and everything happens his way at the club. That's not true. But Setien was wise, given the mess of the playing style, given how disconsolate several players, Griezmann included, disconsolate, given the fact that Alba and Suarez and Messi were very nearly at daggers drawn with Setien and his volatile, mouthy assistant, Eder Sarabia. When Messi said, listen, coach, I think this will work, I want this to happen. That's happened time immemorial in football clubs and international selections where a senior player can say to a coach, this will work. And the coach goes, okay, I'm going to back you. So don't let that message sound like Messi's a martinet. That's not, he's a tough little tyke. And when you're in his bad books, coach, president, fellow player, doesn't matter. When you're in his bad books, you know. But what happened was constructive, creative, and it was right of Setien to go, okay, I listen, I see the tactical improvements, I see what you want, I see what Suarez wants, I see it. And they did it, and it worked out their treat. It doesn't mean that Messi runs the club, and it also doesn't mean that Messi's going to the new president, "Aye, appoint Xavi, appoint Xavi." I don't see that.
Right, it's a very, very interesting situation. Like the timing of when those two things happen is going to be very, very curious, and I didn't realise a lot of that. Like what we were going to get into Graham actually was a little bit of Real Madrid, but I think what's actually probably more interesting with Real Madrid at the moment is possibly their post-Ronaldo life. If you look at perhaps the last few weeks in isolation, they've won all their games in the resumption. What is it, 2-0, 1-0, 1-0, 1-0 have been their last 4 wins. They've been robust in defence, only conceded 1 goal since the return. Does the post-Ronaldo life at Real Madrid look anything akin to how the post-Messi life at Barcelona will look? Or are the structures just so utterly different that you are not comparing like with like?
I think it's important to make that comparison because Real Madrid have ripped up what was the Galactico idea. They've got an engorged squad. They've got far too many players. I mean, once he takes good first-team players back from loan, there's 30-something top-quality footballers in that squad. And elite managers now like to have a maximum sort of 21, 22 with some kids around the fringes. Well, that's not the case at Real Madrid. And what's happened is that Florentino Perez's idea that with nation states owning clubs, there's a fighting chance that Real Madrid won't be always able to buy Galacticos because the Galacticos may now increasingly go as Mbappe did at a very young age before he was proven, went to PSG. PSG managed to take Neymar. City spend slightly differently, but fair play aside, have a similar capacity. The idea of Newcastle being bought by the Saudis and automatically buying Neymar doesn't add up, but Florentino Perez anticipated that there might be more and more of these, and so he switched idea. And having lost Neymar, he hired a team of scouts to go to Brazil and said, "Bring me the next 3 Neymars. When the Empire strikes back, I don't want 1, I want 3." So he's got Renier, he's got Rodrigo, he's got Vinicius, all interesting, exciting young talents. He's got Taki Kubo out at Mallorca. Asensio's still only 24. If you look at Odegaard at La Real, he was playing brilliantly for the first half of the season. So what's coming now, they've just sold Ashraf to Inter when he could have walked back into that team because they think that Mondi is good enough. There is an influx of highly talented youth at Real Madrid. It's looking like they need to refine in very specific ways. There's not an awful lot of work needed to be done at Real Madrid, but because of the pandemic, the market shrinking, the amount of time you've got to do business, the amount of money that's around, how Real Madrid clear out 4 or 5, starting with Bale, obviously, they want to move him out. Starting with, the James Rodriguez wants to go to Atleti across the city, controversial move. The business they've got to do, this post-Ronaldo construction that you talked about, has been difficult for the first year, but now they're going to win what is only, I think, their 9th title since 1990. I think they will win it. Their 4-point gap is sufficient. I don't see them tripping up. It's still arithmetically all to play for, but Real Madrid's triumph this year will be very important in that post-Ronaldo context that you mentioned. What they've got is a structure. Valverde is still, I think, only 22. He's exceptional. Casemiro is still only 28. It needs retouching, nothing more. Really specifics, though. They need another striker. Jovic doesn't work. They need to have the pressure taken off Benzema. But that Real Madrid squad is exceptional. Asensio's come back from a year-long injury looking dandy, absolutely dandy. So if you're a Madridista or even a neutral who doesn't want to see Barcelona dominating all the time, Madrid paints you a really interesting next 2-3 years. And as the neutrals, never mind the team or the club crest, there are 2 or 3 footballers in there. Vinicius, Take, Renier carries a massive reputation, but he's still to be old enough to be pushing his way into that first team. Asensio. There are footballers to watch there that we'll be enjoying for 5, 6, 7 years to come. But the next 24 months paint is really interesting for Real Madrid.
And for Zidane as well, and for him to get the credit as a coach that perhaps hasn't quite been there on a global scale. Nobody talks about Zinedine Zidane as one of the great coaches in world football, and yet look at the success that he's had.
I think, Jared, if it's all right to use the P word at breakfast time in Ireland, let me be pedantic. I'm not sure he's proven yet to be, sorry about that, everybody, just put the cornflakes down, just step away from the anger. I'm not certain he's necessarily, don't laugh, he's necessarily the world's greatest coach. I think he said it himself the other day. I was always a better player than I am a coach. I think what he is something that's still extremely special, that has become more important. And you can make a comparison with Ferguson, for example. Zidane is very, very good in terms of understanding his group, man management, but also I've used on your show the player whisperer idea that he's extremely good at reorientating somebody's concentration. I want this job from you. He's extremely good at taking the senior, wizened old pros and saying, we're not done here and we're not playing the way you want to. This is what I need from you. He's very good at creating a meritocracy. He's really good at promoting the idea that if training is good every day, we win titles. But if training is good every day, I'll give a premium to those who train well. There won't be the president bought me there, therefore I'm completely safe and I can do what I want. And that feeling has existed over the years at Real Madrid, and it's part of the reason that since 1990 they've only won whatever it is, eight titles. So Zidane's ability to get the best out of multimillionaires, some of whom can coast, some of whom can be disaffected because they're not playing 38 times a season in the league. These elements distinguish him, I think, from the rest. And his coaching, you can see that he makes in-game changes that are adequate. He's changed system a lot over his. I guess he's coached as the first team man in charge about 205, 206 times now, and in about 185 of those, it's been a different 11. So he loves to rotate. He loves to challenge. I think he can tweak that and occasionally go for spells of games where it's the same 11 or the same 10 much more regularly and become European competitive again. But he had them playing, and I think the cup idea, that's where you see him inspiring individual players, clusters of players, and I think it helps account for the domination of the Champions League they had, but they've lost. And I think that's how you distinguish Zidane, somebody who's very special and still involved in training. So his coach, David Bertoni, is on the side watching and instructing how the training sessions should be. But Zidane will be very much involved in the 1-2s, the setup, the short games, not to show off what he can do, but to say, I want the tempo like this. I want your touch to be like this. The shooting from distance is a big factor that he's introduced. Up until the last two games where opponents have closed them down, they were shooting at goal 15, 16 times on average every game and scoring from distance, I think, more than anybody in Europe. So he's an interesting man. He's going to be a successful man this season. It's wonderful to have him because he's elegant and funny for us who like to watch and chronicle what's going on. But I'd count him more as a player whisperer, as a man manager, than an elite coach.
One last point, Graham. This is a conversation that Ger and I found ourselves in earlier on. Let's just put it that way, where we were talking about this current Liverpool side, and we were talking about their three midfielders and how, if you compare football from between now and 10 years ago, I mean, the responsibility on the midfield is very different, because you look in the context of the Spanish team 10 years ago, one of the best midfields we've ever seen, whereas Liverpool play in a way that is en vogue, but is playing in a way that perhaps doesn't bestow as much responsibility on passing midfielders. First of all, would you go along with that? And second of all, then, if you had to transport that Spain team into current club football, how would they fare against the Manchester Cities, the Liverpools, the high-octane counter-pressing and things like that? Is it a totally ridiculous take to suggest that perhaps Spain were an outstanding team, but also perfect for their time?
First of all, okay, I take your second part of your question. It's a hypothesis, so we can have fun. But I've spent the last several weeks creating podcasts about 2010. I was there, I accompanied them all the way, but I watched all the training sessions. I think that Spain team, the first thing to say is that it's rare, it's not unheard of, but it's rare that you have your first 16 players in a squad like that are as good as that. I think that's rare. I think that another thing I've learned in subsequent tournaments with Spain is how rare it is to have personalities like that. Intensely hard, tungsten tough winners. Thirdly, that Spain team would win everything. Never mind the change of style of play. What Spain had to cope with then was banks of 9 and 10 in front of them. Barely anybody wanted to play. When Germany wanted to play, the score was only 1-0 because Germany were extremely good. But when they wanted to play, Spain's football was absolutely terrific. In my humble opinion, you had a 2010 side where David Silva was barely used. He was conducting his transfer to Manchester City. Del Bosque lost a bit of faith in him. David Silva had so much more to give to that team. If you look at his stats in the World Cup, Mata's stats in the World Cup, Javi Martinez's stats in the World Cup, basically didn't get any. Marcos Senna was, a fantastic player for Villarreal and got left behind at that stage. All I'm saying is that irrespective of the pace of football now, that Spain team yearned for clubs that come at you, that open up, that if not toe-to-toe, that don't sit and bank defences. They beat them. They beat Paraguay bank defence, Chile bank defence. Portugal were relatively defensive against them. And you no matter about how football changes, if you mix brilliance and utterly hard mentality, you win. You win enough. As far as Liverpool are concerned, you used the word responsibility, and then you qualified it by talking about passing responsibility. And okay, a lot of the passing is done by the full-backs or Van Dijk, and teams are learning a little bit about how to play Liverpool. It's just like learning how to play them and being able to affect it and beat them or dull them is difficult. Liverpool's biggest enemy is themselves, because the responsibility for that midfield is an athleticism that we've rarely seen, a winning of the ball, and a speed of transition. And those three things jigsawed together mean that you individually and the guy to your right and your left and the guy who's on the bench need to be mentally and physically in an extraordinary shape. And patterns of great clubs have shown you need to renew that, because you can't keep a group of men playing at that level where it's all about intensity and mental focus, not genius, at the same level, winning level again and again and again for clutches of 4 or 5 seasons. It has to be the case that somebody better, somebody younger, somebody hungrier, somebody who's not used to winning, somebody who'll challenge you for your place must come in. So you were talking about playing philosophies. Liverpool's massive challenge now, because they've been brilliant. They are, in my lifetime, one of the 2-3 great selection selling outfits in terms of how to work academy and transfer market. They've been extraordinary. How do you retouch? Retouching is completely different from reconstructing. They've done the reconstructing. The finesse of saying that little change and this one in and that one out, or this one less bench time, that will be fascinating to watch. And the rivals will all be sitting going, ooh, we can trip them up now. They will, they will.
Yeah. Graham Hunter, fascinating stuff as always. Thanks a million for joining us.
Cheers.
Graham Hunter there on the line. Right, that is it from OTB AM this morning. We are live from 7:30 every morning in association with Gillette. Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters. If you haven't got the OTB Sports app yet, you can get it right now. Search for OTB Sports and download it from the Google Play Store or on the App Store. And you can get the OTB AM podcast there every single day, and over 40 hours of free podcasts every week, as well as all the latest sports news and more. We'll see you tomorrow morning. Bye-bye for now.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters. The OTB